Hello and welcome to episode 65 of The Imperial Truth. I'm Greg, and on the other end of this line is Neil.
Hello, Greg.
Hello, Neil. How are you doing?
Yes, not bad at all.
Brilliant stuff. We'll jump straight in to, I've just spent far too much money at Element Games.
Again?
Yeah, oh no, don't. It's like, my credit card bill after Adepticon came in and I was looking at my bank account going, I'm struggling. And then I realised I got something wrong and I'm like, I'm not struggling. That's good. So I don't, it was safe anyway, but you know when it is when you think that's all my money gone. I've got.
I know that feeling.
I've agreed overdraft limits and stuff, so I'm not like in danger of going desperately into debt or anything, but it was like, all my money's gone, and then suddenly realised that it wasn't all gone, and I'm like, that means I can afford to buy that stuff for that Warhammer tournament in 2 weeks, which means I then have to paint it all, and we got Easter holiday. If I order
do you know what? Easter holiday's a big thing for me as well. That's exactly what I'm thinking. Oh, Easter holiday, let's get some hobby done.
Yeah, if I order from Element today before 3:00, that'll be at my house tomorrow, so I can pick it up straight after work. Sure enough, there it was. Crack on with it straight away, and fingers crossed, a load more bits for this event. That is where Element come in really good. There are, I used another company recently, and the service was really good and everything, but the way they posted it out meant it was actually a new release didn't turn up till the Monday. And it's like sometimes getting that stuff on the Saturday, because I went for some gaming with a mate on Sunday, and we were going to play, it was Shadow War Armageddon I bought. We were going to play that, but I didn't have a copy of the book till the Monday. And I know that with Element, that 99% chance would have been there on the Saturday, read the rules, go and play on the Sunday. But, and don't get me wrong, the other company are fine and they're great, and I know the guy, and, really, really useful, really good company, just that little bit of, that delivery time.
They've got it pretty nailed down, haven't they, now?
They have, and it's just standard Royal Mail, which is kind of the astounding thing, really.
I suppose it's like anything, though. If you learn the system, like they've learned how Royal Mail operates.
I suppose there's no...
And get things out. They probably get it out bang on when they need it. They know that Royal Mail get it to their processing centre at the set time.
I wonder if maybe there's a little bit more coverage from going through the other delivery systems, but maybe they take a certain amount of risk on percentage of potential lost, but it works fine for me. So yeah, I know that if I've got that event coming up and I need something straight away, boom, it's there, crack on, and gives me more opportunity to get things ready. Then it's just down to me as to whether it happens or not. We're always the weak part of the link, aren't we, really? Yeah, pretty much. Brilliant. And with the Caradron Overseers coming out this week, so that's the Iron Ships and the Duardin.
Yes.
There's a lot of... we got Sean at the club, bless him. He's been looking at Age of Sigmar, and that has made him go... I think he's going to go hell for leather for them. Again, I know the big ship they've got is on a night base, and it overhangs the night base, and it's probably as tall as a Bloodthirster, if not taller.
Nice.
So that is a huge model, but I know that people are looking at them for squats. I'm looking at them for some quirky transports, for some slightly kind of out there kind of gangs things or stuff, things like Kill Team and that. There's loads of cool stuff. So the Caradron Overseers coming out, Overlords, isn't it?
Isn't it weird? Because I really like those models, and I think in some ways you look at them and it's something a little bit different from GW, I feel.
Yeah, this is what Age of Sigmar brings. It brings a super high fantasy, so they can do anything they like, which, is obviously awesome for them.
Yes, no, definitely, completely, yeah.
But yeah, really cool. And do you want to talk about Miles?
Yeah, well, Miles, who is, internet famous by now. I think if you haven't heard of Lil Legend Studios, you definitely should have. He is all over the web. He not only carries out great commissions, but does obviously painting tuition and all the other things you could possibly need. And I noticed on a post, and I think it was on... might have been on Instagram or Twitter, there's an event coming up and there's a painting competition and he's one of the judges.
All right.
for the painting competition with Andy Wardle and Danny Nuttall.
All right. Yeah. Cool.
So yeah, I saw that and thought, oh, he's certainly getting around, is Miles. He's everywhere. If you haven't seen his Instagram and his Twitter or his Facebook, definitely go and check those out. And he is, yeah, he's all over the scene. You know, he's, you know, judging painting competitions. That's a skill in itself.
Yep, and working away on Age of Darkness as well, podcast, and we've done a deal with Miles, and his sponsorship of the show now is going to be some free lessons with him. So what this means is we're going to give some away on the show, and we're going to have some as raffle prizes as well. So what we're going to do is I'm going to set up the next raffle will be around about the time this episode comes out, if not before, and it will finish at the event, the London Heresy. So I can draw it between games 4 and 5 there. We can get the names sorted so we can announce them, the winners at the end of that, because that gives a chance of people who are present to put money in the pot to get tickets and things like that. And we're going to include at least one lesson in that, and then we're going to give away some on the show as well. And so,
fantastic.
Yeah, and so these are ones obviously that you can do in your own time over Skype with him or Google Hangouts or whatever he uses, and run through stuff. And use that for whatever you want with him, really. Which is pretty
when you
cool.
said that he was obviously sponsoring the show with painting lessons, I thought, oh, we were getting them. So I'm a little bit disappointed now.
You're disappointed you're not getting a painting lesson?
Yeah.
Ah, fair enough. Well, yeah, I probably do need them, but, you know, hey-ho. We carry on regardless. So brilliant. So keep an eye out for that. I will get that sorted, I'm sure, soon. Excellent stuff. So, what have you been up to, Neil? How are you back on the horse?
No, I'm completely fallen off the horse again, and I'm struggling to get motivated.
You just love that manic push to the end, yeah?
I think when May hits, I might suddenly get my arse in gear. But also, I've had a load of stuff going on. You know, I don't know if you saw, but I injured my ankle when I was in hospital. And
I didn't, actually.
Yeah, I fell off a wall.
That was a bit silly.
Badly twisted my ankle. I put it up on Twitter saying, "Is this broken?"
Failed his dangerous
lots
terrain
of
test.
responses for Twitter saying, "Oh, yeah, it looks nasty." So I've had loads of stuff going on, and it's really weird. Just, you know, that whole thing we try and say, like, you know, an hour a night, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I just can't even if I sit at the painting table, I just really am struggling to put brush to model.
On anything.
On anything, yeah. I mean, I'm got Corax in front of me, and I just can't. I don't know. Maybe I need something to G me up, and I'm thinking maybe an event or something that, you know, even if I don't get Corax ready for Golden Demon Classic, if I went there, I know that would probably just completely fire me up. Yeah, looking at loads of fantastic models would just make me
Sure, yeah.
uber excited. I think maybe I need a hobby shot in the arm.
Or maybe London Heresy. That's a month away, though.
Well, yeah.
That's the week before, isn't it? That's too late as well.
The week before, that is a push, isn't it?
Oh, blimey. Yeah, what are you going to do? You need to get down the gaming club.
Yeah, I think I need something, definitely. Maybe I'll chat to Miles, get a painting lesson.
Yeah, absolutely. Why not? Well, I've been, I got back on the horse after Adepticon. Again, leading up to the South Coast GT, it's mainly been my Stormcast, but cracking back up with the hour a night, which has been good. So I'm about 10 hours behind, I think, now.
Not bad then. You're doing well.
Yeah, because I dropped down to, like, before Adepticon, I was like 70 something, and I've got it up to near 90 hours now. So, for various reasons, I've got tomorrow off work, so hopefully there's going to be a lot done for tomorrow.
Are you still doing Stormcast at the moment?
Yeah, lots and lots of Stormcast. And then I need to kind of break the wolves out. Plenty to be done on them. Which, I managed to do some building and stuff at work, so I was still going to plan on getting some stuff into work and doing some building there. The other thing I've done is really gone through my spare room today, reorganised all my books and everything else and cleaned up, and I realised how much other Warhammer stuff I've got. And it's like, after the Stormcast, like for Warhammer, it's going to have to be one of those armies I've already got painted. They're just going to have to be rebased or whatever, so there's no driving need for for that kind of stuff. So hopefully I can concentrate on Heresy amongst Shadow War Armageddon, Warhammer Quest Shadows over Hammerhall, Blood Bowl, all those other things.
Tons of stuff. Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? It's so diverse now with the games, the specialist games and things come out that there's so much to steal your attention.
Yeah, definitely. And, I suddenly realised as well, look, I've got a load of reading to do, and, I've probably talked before on this, I've got sleep apnea, which, fingers crossed, I've tried my first night with my new machine, so hopefully that's going to give me a bit more energy, and when I actually sit down to read a book, I can actually read it without wanting to fall asleep. So hopefully that will help that side of things as well. So I'll be kind of immersed in it big time, I think, over the next few months. Whether the girlfriend likes that or not is a different matter. Although she wants me, I came back from Adepticon with a Reaper Bones owlbear, and she's claimed that as hers, and I'm going to have to try and teach her how to paint, which I've never done that before for anyone, so that should be interesting.
Are you the best person to teach someone to paint?
That's a bit harsh. I got my Stormcast with the Space Wolf head. Got over it's 120 odd likes now on Instagram, and that's my first big kind of number. I'm like, woo, yeah, go me. Amazing. So yeah, very cool. Awesome stuff. Well, I think we can leave that there, and we'll go and talk some news, shall we?
Yes.
Cool. Okie dokie, into the news. So, if memory serves, we recorded before the Friday last week, so forgive us if this is hashing over old stuff, but I don't think it is, without checking, because we're that organised. But Fortwell brought out the jet bikes.
Hooray!
Yes, so the Grifalcon pattern jet bike, or the Agmatus jet bike. And you can buy these individually in sets of 3 or sets of 6, and buying 3 you get a £9 off. Yeah, £9. Best part about it. Yeah, so I saw, it was quite funny, I saw people saying, how can they justify this price? Well, for a start, they're big, aren't they?
Yes, they're bigger than your average ship, right?
Yeah, which are £28, which are expensive, so these are £5 more. They're also you're not going to sell as many, I don't think, as the other jet bikes, in theory. So I think that is an inflated price on jet bikes for that. Because, in a custodian army, you're probably going to have 6 of these maximum, unless you go, and some armies won't even have that many.
Yeah, sure.
There is
definitely. They won't sell loads of them, are they?
No, I think they'll sell plenty, but it's not like having a whole army of White Scars or what have you, which kind of necessitates the other ones being cheaper, to be fair, and that's why people want plastics. But but they are big. That's a custodian. Custodians are bigger than Marines, and that's them on that jet bike. When we got back from the Weekender, I think we talked about it on the show about hoping that they would be just under £100. And in fact, yes. I think I said that I would like them to be like 105, 110, and then brought down for buying 3. So I think we were, within £5 of what they were saying, of what they've ended up being, which is quite good. But I saw some people saying, how can they justify this price? And then the next one was like, yeah, exactly what I thought it would be. So, justify the price because that's the price. You pay it or you don't.
Exactly.
Same with anything.
How posable are the different? Because is it one? Obviously, it's exactly the same jet bike that you get repeated 3 times. Is there different posability to it rather than? I'm not sure there's much. So you get that lance, don't you? Yeah.
The amazing lance. Let me have a little look. I don't really know that there's a huge amount of posability, but see what you could do with them. I suppose with the plastics, you could probably cut them up a little bit and do a few bits and pieces. I mean, at the end of the day, the left hand is always going to be on the steering rack, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's really
And then
only that right hand. So, yeah, you got the plastics you can fiddle about with. But whether that's, what you can do with that. But again, you're only getting, the chances are most armies will have 3 or 6. The odd army might go for more and some will go for none. And it seems to be that there's only one weapons section, so where there's some confusion in the rules about whether you can have more than one weapon on there, it's an upgrade rather than a additional. But
weapon.
I think they look great.
Yeah, I think they're cool. Fantastic.
And when I do Custodes, I will have some. At least 3, probably 6. Just because they're cool. Not cheap, but none of this hobby's cheap.
No, yeah, if you're thinking you're going to get some cheap resin, then you're dreaming.
But yeah, and that's a story in itself, But these are £100 a model. So when you're buying 3, 100 point a model, so £30 per 100 points if you're upgrading them, which I will. It's not cheap, but that's fine for me. There's a lot worse units out there than that.
I remember when
the Thralls came out first time.
Thralls came out, it was like £1 a point.
It was £1 a point. It was £1 a point. And some of the transports, you only have to look at a plastic rhino. When you look at it that way, they're a lot of money. But they just feel bigger. I think people con themselves, this kit's really good value. It's like, well, it's not much
really
different.
It's 35 points.
Yeah, and when you look at that, there's a solid block of resin in a jet bike, in a Custodes jet bike. And, a Rhino is a larger piece, but that's thin panels of resin. Or thinner panels.
Yes.
So, yeah. It is what it is, as they say. Okie dokie. And then we got the Caslax Archaea Battle Automata with the Mauler Pattern Bolt Cannon and the Aether Flame Cannon. These little
glad
beauties.
to see these guys.
Yeah, they are stunning, and the paint job on them looks amazing as well. And they're hitting the 1,000 suns by not giving you a discount when you buy 5. I'm not too sure. 5's a huge amount to fit in an army, which is pretty expensive anyway. But it's cool. It is cool. Yeah, no, these are gorgeous. And as Mark Bedford said, we could be looking at, because this is CAD now as well, we could be looking at some of the Dark Mechanicum, taking a few cues from the claws and things like that going forwards, which I think is fantastic and might make me branch out my Mechanicum into some darkness as well.
Well, I suppose that's a good thing about them as well. If you wanted to mix up your Mechanicum a bit, you could buy a couple of these and do some swap abouts and just...
Well, yeah, these are the 1,000 Suns ones anyway, but if you wanted to, play around with it, that, the kind of, the head, as it were, or the sensor array on top, that could easily be filed down smooth if you wanted it to. And those claws look amazing, and the centre bit doesn't have the skull, but you can play around with that as well. If you want some more innate looking automata.
Yeah, definitely.
They are stunning. But that was it. That's it new from Forge World. Black Library did update their coming soon page, because as of recording, Perturabo should be turning up. The limited edition Perturabo Hammer of Olympia should be turning up. There are still plenty of copies of those to go. So, they're kind of getting that right in that they do sell them out in the end, but it's not an immediate sellout.
It's not a mad rush to try and get them.
We've had July, that's it. So Primarch's Lorgar limited edition, and then Dark Compliance, which is the story of Horus sending his equerry to a Forge World, telling them exactly what he'll do to take over the planet. And then the Horisian Wars as well. I know it's not 30k, but that's going to be really interesting, because that's the Inquisitors. And it's only June for Crimson King, actually. We're piling through April as it is. It'll be May soon, and then Crimson King will be out not long after that. My word. I've got to do some reading. Some more reading, yeah. Nightmare. But I think that's about it, new-wise. I mean, the Shadow War Armageddon scenery's out now, which is fantastic for if you want to build up, particularly for smaller games, I think, where you can run around in some parts of it.
Yeah, I really want to get hold of some of that if I can.
Yeah, well, they're released individually now.
Yeah, I'm thinking about getting. I've got a bit of a terrain addiction, but I think I quite fancy getting some of that.
Right. So yeah, I mean the box set was a ridiculous money off for what you get in there, as they quite often are. They don't put the prices up on the terrain; they give you a discount on the box. For some reason, people struggle with that idea as well. But so yeah, what we got here? The Alchemite stack is 24 quid. The Ferrotonic Furnace is 24 quid, and the Galvanic Magnavent is 36 quid. So, it's not unreasonable. And you can, that's on Element Games, that is, those prices. So that's fantastic. And Shadow War itself, there are a couple of groups. I think the Crusade and Heresy, there's a group on there who are looking into doing 30k rules, and on the 30k forum, they're doing the same. There's some groups out there, and I know some other kind of independent groups are looking at the Heralds of Ruin thing. Some people on there will prefer the new Shadow War kind of style. Maybe it's a bit simpler. Maybe it just depends on what you want from the game, I suppose. But that's fantastic as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, that's great.
That terrain is really good. So get on to Element Games, and by the time this is out, I say those Caradrin are released as well. So, and there's some huge models on that. Those ships.
Have you seen them up close and personal yet?
No, I haven't. But I know that the big ship is on a night base and pretty much overhangs it.
Sweet.
Yeah, it's just fantastic. And all the little dudes are perfect. They're on 25mm bases in the pictures, so if you are having them as squats or abhumans of any kind, then they fit perfectly for that as well. So, yeah. And if you are in the UK or Europe, remember to go through Element Games, go through theimperialtruth.com, click on the banner, and don't forget to put your friend's code in for the extra points as well. It all adds up. All adds up. And I also, by the time this is out, and I haven't told Neil this, you will be able to purchase shirts on Zazzle. The first shirts are up.
Oh, really? That's good news.
And they are. Yeah, so what do you think of those, Neil?
They look great. Really impressed.
Yeah, so the idea is it's like a band tour shirt. And on the back, it's got Taking the Throne tour and then a list of planets with the logo. And on the front, it's called War Master. As the kind of the name of the album. I'll put a link in the show notes, and it'll be all over the social media before that anyway. So yeah, if you want to get one, Zazzle do good quality stuff. So this was the cheapest black shirt I could put them on. And once you print on both sides, it's not cheap, but it's also going to last. I bought a D6 Generation t-shirt from Zazzle 8 years ago, something like that. Yeah, something ridiculous. Maybe not quite that long. Yeah, it probably is that long, actually. Or longer, and it's still fine. Whereas, yes, I could go and get, these done for 12, 14 quid, but I'm pretty sure they'll peel off within, 6 months. Start peeling.
Yeah. No, people don't want to pay money and then have something to throw away.
Yeah, I'm going to look at some other companies, but this also allows me to sell UK and America, so they have two separate stores where they make them in the UK, or in Europe at least, and America. So that also makes things easier. And the show does get a small kick, and I mean a small kick off that as well. But I will be populating the store with more ideas as I coerce people into getting them. And Patreon supporters, in case you haven't seen, then I'm going to review the Patreon thing, and you will get some help at certain levels for purchasing them. So yeah, that's about it for the news, I think. I don't think there's a huge amount else out there.
No, I don't think there is.
We're kind of in a lull with 40k, waiting to hear anything more, and it's kind of that post book kind of period where we're now looking already towards the next book. But
yeah, we're never happy.
And we got Warhammer Fest coming up. So what's that? Just over a month and a bit away.
Yeah, so hopefully there'll be a nice new.
There'll be loads.
Glut of new stuff.
Yeah, I mean that's what someone was complaining. We haven't seen the Contemptor Dread for the Wolves yet, but that was pretty much one of like two things they showed from the Space Wolves. So the February, and when we talk about a 3-month period, which isn't official, they haven't stated that. But if we look at a 3-month period, that takes us through to the end of May. So we've still got another 6 weeks of releases potentially. And there's probably we got some of the infantry still to come, haven't we, from the Thousand Suns?
Yeah.
And then a few other bits and pieces. It's probably all going to be in that time, and then get a whole fresh new load at Warhammer Fest. So if they are on that kind of schedule, then actually it seems to work. Because then after 3 months after Warhammer Fest, we're probably going to have the Forge World Open Day.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, and that'll be quite a nice way to do it then, because you'll get to see the new stuff, but you won't be going, oh well, we saw that at the last
this
event.
Is it. We saw that the Contemptor, Space Wolf's Contemptor Dread for the first time at the Weekender, and people are moaning it's not out already, and that is the problem when you show stuff early, and It doesn't matter how much, because on a 3-month period, when people get used to that, they'll be like, oh, it's 2 months, it's still not out, Yeah. And people's expectations move with the targets that are set. And, purchasers are never happy. They always want what they want, in general. So, yeah, you're never going to win, but a 3-month period is kind of about right, I think. That it's that kind of time where you're not going to get, you'll be frustrated, but you can't get massively frustrated, I don't think, with a 3-month wait period. It's a bit different with like the Moritats took heaven knows how long, year and a bit, to come out. And I know they changed slightly, but that's frustrating.
Yeah, I think, I remember waiting for the Chainglades.
Yeah.
Night Lords, thinking, oh yeah, I'll get those, and that'll just finish off the Night Lords nicely, and it was, oh yeah, they will be coming out at some stage, and just waiting and waiting and waiting, and knowing that it's not something, sometimes it's not the complicated stuff.
No.
That you're waiting for. It's sometimes the simplest bits and pieces.
Yeah, and if you didn't know they're coming out, you might convert your own.
Yes.
But because you know they're done, you hold off. And if you hold off 3 months, hold off a project for 3 months, I can do another project for that 3 months, that's fine. When it's 8-9 months, a year, right, that's like, I've got these models sitting there, they've been sitting there for a year, and then you get into that kind of gamble. As soon as I build some other models, make my own conversions, it's going to come out.
Yeah.
And then you're on that tightrope then of, do I just do it, or do I wait, or what? And that is frustrating. So yeah, if they follow that kind of timeline, then I think that's reasonable.
And how exciting will it be to go to
Warhammer
Fest or Forge World Open Day, knowing that everything that you're going to see in the cabinets is going to be
within 3 months, within
3 months, and going to be something new to surprise you, rather than, oh, I know it's not out, but I saw that at the last event, because that was always a little bit.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. You got people going, oh, we've seen these before, haven't we? And all that jazz as well. Yeah, you're right. And if that means they have to hold stuff back because they know it's not going to be ready in 3 months, then fine. Does it, ignorance is bliss in a way. Yeah, we should be seeing, in theory at Warhammer Fest, we should be seeing, Space Wolves units, upgrades, those things. Magnus, if they don't release it at Warhammer Fest, you never know. Warhammer Fest is going to be a bit different this year because of that con feeling. They have announced, that was one thing I saw. I was watching the Warhammer TV and they announced they're using, West Coast Pairings, I think it is. There's an app made by the guys who do the ITC, I believe. I could be wrong on that one. Just trying to remember. Too many different things going through my head. But to play in the grand tournaments or the opens, because they suddenly realised that the Hobbit already has a grand tournament and you can't have 2 grand tournament winners for the year. So they've changed the name to the Open or something like that. But to play in those, the data needs to be input on the app. So at least one person at the table has to be or someone around has to be able to put the information in, which is cool. They're embracing, a product made by the hobbyers, and are endorsing it, and I'm sure they'll work with them to improve it and things like that as well. But, so Warhammer Fest is changing. I think they might be streaming a lot of games that weekend as well. But it's becoming more of a con. And even if it's only going to be for 2 days, then that's quite cool. So who knows how they treat it? Are they going to treat it more as, okay, we better release something that day as well? Which they might do.
They might do.
So
wait and see what.
A Magnus release on that day would be 7 months after Russ, which would be cool. A decent amount of time. Because we know.
Yeah, and we talk about, Sam, how long it takes him to get these Primarchs done. That's not bad.
No, absolutely. I mean, who knows what goes into exactly what he's doing with all the Primarchs or characters he's working on. But, yeah, I like the idea that maybe I go up there for an event every 3 months and find out the new information. And when I go, I can talk about, can talk to the designers about the new stuff rather than the old stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
I think the only one that might bleed longer would be the Sisters Transport, potentially. Because we saw, although it was there finished, I got the feeling it was behind the others in order of kind of how far along it was. But
do you think it was maybe brought along because there was a picture of it in the book and it was quite prominent?
Yeah, maybe. Maybe they thought, we'll show it off. I mean, it might be done. I could be wrong. This is me, this is absolutely complete, me trying to work it out, but who knows?
And speaking of pictures in books that show the stuff was done, Thunderhawk Gunship.
Oh, yes, I forgot to speak about that. Yes. So we have a new resin Thunderhawk gunship, and it looks fantastic as far as I'm concerned. The old plastic rumours, bless. I'm not 100% sure it would work in plastic as well as people say it would have, or sold as many, or, the amount of times people, I would definitely have bought that. That's how Specialist Games finished. Even now, I think there's a lot of people going onto eBay and buying the old school, like Blood Bowl teams rather than buying the new ones. And that doesn't generate GW money.
That's why they're doing those made-to-order ones now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's brilliant that made-to-order, because it means all those sort of people on eBay that think they've got something that's going to make them a fortune.
Yeah, but it makes it affordable for the people who want them. I get amazed, like, a lot of those Blood Bowl teams are not very good.
Yeah.
Right? They really aren't. Some of them are, best part of 30 years old. Like, the Chaos team is so static. All the Beastmen pretty much in the same pose. The 4 Chaos Warriors are the same pose. I don't even know if they're bringing that one back. But, like, there are some awful, and I'm talking comparative to what we have now available to us. There's some pretty poor teams in that. But people buy nostalgia. Way more than they should, really. And I get that some people really do like them, but I think there is a lot of it is people buying nostalgia. But yeah, they brought out the new Bright Crusaders, so that's a different variant on the human team as well to help, give variety and push sales, which is fine. That's how these games will survive, is by selling stuff. So, yeah, maybe the Thunderhawk, plastic Thunderhawk. I know a lot of people say they would buy it. I don't think anywhere near as many, because it's still as big as it would be, and people still wouldn't be able to use it a huge amount.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah, it is a risk, isn't it? And maybe it is just right for resin. You know, maybe it is.
They probably so it's like £30,000 a plastic mould. You know, what size box does it come in? How many sprues do you need? You know, what price would it be in plastic?
Yeah.
You know, and then to make that money back, you'd have to sell a lot. And it's not really one for the kiddies, is it?
No, it's not your...
So they've upgraded it. If you want it, you can go and get a fantastic new looking one. And I did see Battle Bunnies post an apology because they proclaimed the plastic one was coming. Which I think from the Weekender, which I thought, oh, that's interesting because it wasn't, nothing I saw said it was plastic. And I think they just either got a bit ahead of themselves or misunderstood something. But it was almost a clickbaitish article, which is the first time they've kind of headed that way. So I give them a bit of grace, because I don't think that that's what their intention was. I think there was an absolute belief that it would be plastic. But
because looking at those pictures in the book, and you could tell that they were, you know, computer renders. Yeah. You know, I could see that logic where people would say, oh well, you know, it's definitely going to be a plastic one. Why would they redo it? All this sort of stuff. So
there's a difference between a news site, you know, and they're not bowls, they're not spiky bits, you know. Those guys, I fully expect new whatever coming out without any basis for saying it. And to be fair to Battle Bunnies, they came out and rather than hide underneath it, I think it was Drake, just kind of said, yep, got it wrong. Apologies. Fair play. But I think even Spiky Bits was still saying that there was a new plastic Thunderhawk coming. It's like that. It's one of those rumours that will never disappear.
Yeah. I think you're right. It's going to be there for a long time.
Forever and ever. Yeah. But yeah, no, that'll be up. If you've always wanted a Thunderhawk, I think it does look a lot better.
I mean, I think it's a definite improvement. Yeah. I think, you know.
It must be easier to put together as well.
Well, because I had the original metal one.
Oh, did you? In the wooden box?
In the wooden box. And I bought it when I was a full-timer for 200 quid, I think it was. And it was a pig of a model. It really was.
I can imagine.
Absolutely horrendous. And I look at that one now, and even when you look at the resin one, you think of the improvement, and you look at the new one, you think it is a real good progression. You know, it's definitely looks a lot better.
What else is, yeah. That was a holy grail back then, wasn't it? The metal Thunderhawk.
Yeah, it was. It was quite a...
Don't want to drop that on the table.
Oh, it couldn't support its own weight. The legs were so small compared to the weight of the metal that literally you only had to look at it and the legs buckled underneath it.
Was that an actual Forge World model?
No,
it wasn't, was it?
Think so, no.
No, that was before all that. Yeah, because, for those who don't know, Forge World grew up out of GW and out of actually giving licenses to people like Armorcast to make GW models and things like that. For a really kind of ripped apart history of Forge World. But, definitely kids don't know how good they got it. They really don't. I couldn't even imagine that much trying to do that. Just clean up that much metal. It's horrible.
Well, do you know what? The cast of it was very, very good. And I remember lots of people saying how great the metal cast was and why couldn't they do that with all their metal models. But for me, it was, one, the instructions told you the wrong way to build it.
Oh, classic, yeah.
Classic. One of those ones of, we're going to test you here, because it had this mad thing where it had all brass rods going through the middle of it. And they thought that the way to build it was build the front, build the back, and then slot it together with like 10 brass rods going through all these individual holes.
Oh, right.
And it was just like, that will never work. It will never ever work. And I spoke to a full-timer who built one previously. He said, no, you build it from the inside out. So build the frame.
Yeah.
And then slap everything onto it and build it. And I went, that makes sense.
Yeah, they still do that now with some of their other models.
And it was an absolute pig of a model. It really was. And I remember, gluing those feet on so many times and then just buckling underneath every single time.
Oh, I love it. I suppose at least it was a cheap model.
But I suppose you look at that now. I mean, the thing is, I think it was a different price point back then. 400 quid for a model back then was just off the scale.
Oh, yeah.
And now, 400 quid for a model, probably most people go, yeah, and?
Yeah, bought a night for 300 and some odd. Yeah, no worries. Yeah.
So, but it's back in the day, when things were a lot different. So.
Oh, big time.
One hell of a model.
Yeah, I'm not going to get one. I'm just not going to use it. But it's one of those ones I'd love to own. Just hang it from the ceiling in the front room.
Yeah, why not? Epic style.
That's it. Have them posed fighting each other. Have two, have three, have a Stormbird.
Yeah.
What could go wrong? Awesome. Okay, we'll leave that there and come back and answer some questions. Right, so we're going to answer a few questions that were put out. We have got some new segments of the show coming. Don't you worry about that. But I thought I'd throw out a classic kind of what do you want us to talk about? And, why not? There are, some of these were dealt with in the news, so anything about the new Thunderhawk we've already talked about, so we're not going to cover that again. We had Dan Evans talking about lists for events. Now, we're not really that kind of show. So we've talked about this a number of times. The problem I've got with the Heresy is it's not tournament focused. Not that 40k, you can't play 40k that way or Warhammer that way or whatever. But, there are a lot of tournaments for 40k and Warhammer, and so lists become more predominant. In the Heresy, we're talking about what people like, the kind of that everyone talks about not being that guy with that list or whatever, and maybe at some point soon, hopefully we're going to have a really good discussion about that. But talking about what people are bringing to an event kind of seems like advertising more of a competitive style of approach. I don't know.
And I'm terrible when people talk to me about lists because I find it hard to really visualize them sometimes. And also for me, it's a bit like reading, reading Latin, so I've got this and I've got that. It's like, that's good. Yeah. I like to see things on the table. I like to see them being played and then seeing if things are effective. Yeah. Rather than trying to read a list and going, this would be amazing.
Yeah, and my problem is as soon as you start talking about effectiveness or anything like that, over a pretty short period of time, you start to kind of cut out the stuff that's not effective and you start talking about refining lists, and it's like, well, that's fine. That's not, there's no problem with that, but that is not necessarily the way most people view the Heresy in terms of, yes, we all do refine lists, we all do, look at stuff. That's part of the human nature of doing it. But if you're playing this as a narrative game at narrative events, then that's not your be all and end all. You want to be able to compete, but you don't want to be that guy steamrolling over everyone. This is why, people aren't generally talking about taking kind of Magnus, dropping him in, doing all his Nova powers, bringing in all his, most people who are playing the Thousand Suns who want to choose Magnus will play him a different way because they know that, they approach the game in a way which is about narrative or storytelling. You try and win, everyone will try and win. That's fine. That's good. But before you get to the table, just kind of restraining yourself that bit to have that level of game. Because you can, in the heresy, people talk about the heresy being, balanced. It's not balanced. Everyone can have like the same things. Well, yes and no. Some people's are much better than others, and there are easy ways to create lists that are not fun. And it's not even balanced for me. It's lists that aren't fun. And lists that
and
are...
it stems from the person as well. You could have a list that most people might say is filthy or is really broken. It depends how that person plays it, and it depends on the person, because you can see some people that will take a mild list and play it in a way that can upset other people.
Yeah, absolutely.
It stems from the person.
There's a lot of that. There's a lot of subjectivity. The amount of times we've said this a number of times, but the amount of times I've seen someone say that list is filthy. My classic one was I took that All Marauder Cav army to the South Coast Grand Tournament. And the only reason, I was taking it no matter what. And then the pack came out. And luckily the pack actually allowed me to win games, because if it was a standard 20-0 system rather than a win-loss-draw system, I would have been nowhere. But actually the way that system worked ended up meaning that I could do okay with it if I played well. But I had to play well and everything else. And if I came up against the wrong matchups, I was dead. And then one guy played against me, played the game completely wrong, didn't even consider my army. And then 2 years later, he's talking to my mate about this filthy army he played. And I'm like, filthy army? I'm like, if you know what you're doing against it, you can stop it. It's like when that new army comes out, right? It's always either doesn't work or it's the best thing ever. Until it depends how hard it is to use. Sometimes it's the people using the army who need to learn it. Sometimes it's the people they're facing who need to learn how to deal with it. But once you've learned how to deal with it, then you can start to play that army. So they come out, whatever's filth. And it's like, well, is it filth, or are you picking all the wrong options when you're attacking it? So, yeah, what we might do is after the event, we might talk about like the breakdown of armies, the styles of armies, and maybe pick out a few really kind of interesting ideas that were put down.
There might be some armies that stand out for us that we thought were a really cool idea or a really nice way that they looked or how they played. And that's, and if I've seen it as well, I might be more engaged than someone just trying to read out a load of list stuff.
Yeah,
which is never good.
Again, you can, it's so easy to sit here and say, well, Leviathans are good, so take a couple of them, put them in drop pods, bish, bash, bosh, right? That's, what are you doing there? Everyone knows Leviathans are good and you can put them in drop pods. Custodes are good, jet bikes are good. Custodes jet bikes are really good. Take 6 of them, boom, away you go. But you lose something. If you're just looking at the mathematics of it, you're losing something. And in a narrative event, or in a narrative, when you're building to a narrative, everyone's got a different narrative.
Yeah. So, completely.
But, I've listened to other podcasts, and I don't blame them for it. This is what happens when you talk about lists to a certain extent. They talk about a list, and people say, what do you think? And invariably, you'll come up with a way to make that list better. Where again, you start to push towards that harder end. So it's just, if you've got a cool idea for a list, play it. Have fun with it. Again, the only kind of really things I do talk about is make sure you can deal with everything, You might have to sacrifice something. So, being able to deal with flyers is a classic one, where sometimes some armies will go, if they bring 3 or 4 flyers, I'll have to get lucky. But make sure you've got enough anti-tank to bring down a Spartan, and not just one option, 2 options to bring down a Spartan, because chances are there'll be some Spartans you're facing. And, if it's not a Spartan, it'll be a Typhon, or it'll be a Mechanicum tank, or whatever.
There's plenty of armor 14 for you to try and kill.
Exactly, yeah, make sure you've got one thing I don't see people doing. The Custodes might shift the meta a little bit, for want of a better term, but Mechanicum struggle against a large number of decent, like, strength shots. So, like, autocannons rip Thalax apart, you know, and they rip Vorax apart, and they do damage elsewhere as well. They make Castellax make more saves, things like that. But they're not brilliant against Marines, so people have backed off of them. Well, they won't be bad against Custodes, because again, they'll just be making them make more saves.
Yeah.
So, you know, that is off the top of my head.
Decent strength, lots of shots.
Yeah.
That's going to be a Custodian's worst nightmare.
Are autocannons going to be the best thing in the game? No.
Yeah.
But do they potentially do something different when, for quite a while now, people with Marine armies have been saying that Mechanicum armies are the real hard armies to play? Well, that's because they've never adapted to them. It's half of it. It's not all of it, but it's part of it. So maybe you need to look at, how do I deal with Castellax? How do I deal with Custodes? And then, how do I deal with a Primarch? Because someone might put a Primarch against you. And then, how do I get to objectives and take them and hold them? So you need to just think about those things. And generally, a balanced force over the course of 5 games will do better and be more engaging to play for both you and your opponent. That doesn't mean you can't go all one way, but you must be aware that every now and then you're going to come up against a game that doesn't work. So you'll be running across the table with your all-infantry list, and they'll be putting down strength 8 plates and just killing everything. You know, that can happen if you go all in one way. So, you know.
I've always said if you go a certain way with a list, there's always a counter list to that, isn't there?
Yeah, and usually more than one as well. So, you know, these things happen. But yeah, there's, and also think about your opponent as well. If you're going to take, you know, if you're going to take Armoured Breakthrough and sit it in your own deployment zone, how much fun is that? Really? You know, it's not 100% engaging. Now, if you take Armoured Breakthrough and you are moving them about and everything else, there's a different story potentially. So again, that's not about the list, 100%, 20% of it is the way you play it, as you said.
Yeah.
There's so much to be brought in with that, and certainly some of the rights of war. Maybe I might reach out to Ben and see if he wants to come on the show and talk, because he had some good ideas at Durham talking about some of the rights of war and how they affect the game. And that's something that we can look at as event organisers, as gamers ourselves. So, yeah. I think we've talked lists to death without actually doing any lists.
Yeah.
Which is quite good. So, moving on, Jay, discussions on Legion pairings and prominent units which make a good third Horus Heresy box from GW. So we've had Wordbearers versus Ultramarines, Betrayed at Calth, Thousand Sons of Space Wolves for Prospero. What would be next ideal based on law and model requirements?
Well, I personally, and if they timed it right, it would be fantastic if I think they did like Dark Angels and Night Lords.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So, what are we talking about in those? So, you're talking something along the lines of Thramas.
Yes, something along those lines.
And Night Lords having, say, jump troops.
Yep, that's a good. Yeah, because then you could get some good. They could do the cool jump troops. They could maybe do some plastic jet bikes in there. Raven Wing.
Okay, yeah. You could do some Mark II armor, or for them.
Yes, that would work for them.
Doesn't really. Yeah. What
Mark
else?
II armor, plastic jet bikes, plastic assault squads. And then I'm trying to think of something else that you could want to mix in there. You'd need something else as well, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously you'd have a character or two, which they could do maybe an apothecary.
Yep.
And then
plastic Sakaran.
I suppose it depends what you're doing, because then you'd have to pick a point that like Sakaran wouldn't really fit in with those other troops, would it?
No, and it may be a bit of a.
It's a bit
There's
overkill.
a lot of plastic in that box, then.
Yeah, it would be over. I can't see that happening. yeah, I don't really know. I mean, the obvious one, the one that people talked about, like maybe wanted, was File. So, Imperial Fist versus Iron Warriors Battle of File, having breaches for the fists, and maybe some Mark II for the Iron Warriors, and doing it that way. Again, another option would be including the scars somewhere, but where would you include the scars? Don't have an iconic battle until Terror.
Yeah.
So I think that would be difficult. I mean, they could even I don't think they would do it because it doesn't necessarily scream heresy, and I think they'll keep the demons, like the small demons, the same, but they could do Cygnus with Blood Angels versus.
I thought it would be tricky to do it with the demons, though. That was
well, they could just sell demons.
They could just sell demons, and it would be an easy option for them, wouldn't it?
Yeah, the problem is I don't think it's iconic enough heresy-wise in terms of just selling demons, so I don't think they would. I mean, we have been told they're not doing another box, but they would say that even if they were. So
exactly.
I ignore that, and we might get one, we might not. Haven't heard anything. So, I'm not saying there is a box, but I'm not saying there isn't a box. All I know is Forge World have said no, and they've said no before many times about things that are happening. So, yeah, I mean, it's hard. Trying to find a Legion which on both sides has that mix, because you look at, you'd want more variety than just jet bikes, assault troops, and Mark II. But actually, once you get to that point, what else are you looking at?
Yeah, what other new plastic could they put in there to make it exciting? Because we've got both sets of Terminators now.
Yeah, I mean, I would love jet bikes, don't get me wrong. Or maybe new plastic bikes.
Yeah.
Because you could see Night Lords riding those, and then assault troops, and then Dark Angels having jet bikes and that Mark II. Could work.
Yeah, it could balance out.
But, yeah, I really don't know. We've got the other thing as well is potential for it to fit into the storyline like they tried with Prospero. So I don't know what stories are coming out. We haven't got that many more stories to tell that we know fully. And the ones we do tend to be bigger. So breaking them down, things like the Wolf Cull. We've got, I can't remember the name of the big battle just outside of the Sol system, but that involved tanks upon tanks upon tanks. The Death Guard turn, but that's not in a big battle. So there doesn't seem to be a real obvious answer from that, and whether they'd go backwards or not, I don't know. But yes, plastic jet bikes would be lovely.
It would make them really accessible for everyone, wouldn't it?
Yeah. I wonder how many they sell. It's one of those things. You see the odd ones around, but because tooling on, for those who don't know, the upfront cost for tooling on plastic is huge. So they have to kind of know that they're going to sell in a quantity to make that worthwhile. And as something that's not really in 40k, it's limited to 30k audience. Are they going to make enough money off of it?
I'd like to say they would, but you never really know the finances behind it, so it's hard to say.
No, and it's not just making a profit; it's making the levels of profit that company makes on its products. Because they've got their margins they have to work to, and they can't have too many products bringing that down, because that's the way the business is set up. So, yeah, you bring out Mark III armor, brilliant. Your 40k players can still buy it. You bring out a Contemptor Dreadnought, cool. You bring out some Terminators, cool. But if they got jet bikes, then they'll have to start bringing them in. Who's to say they won't?
Who's to say they won't start bringing those? I mean, with so much stuff, there is the crossover that they're putting in there now. With
the way 40k's going, we know we're getting a new edition, and we're supposedly getting these Guilliman Supermarines. So who knows what could happen with technology or finding STCs or what have you. In that, they could always bring them in. But yeah, I still think, FAL or that Thramas one would work quite well. I think they're the two most obvious
Yeah, I think so.
And most logical choices. Well, whether they do one or not is a bigger thing, really, I suppose.
I'd like them to. I'd like them to do it.
Cool. All right, Dave Simpson. Diametric opposites style-wise when choosing a loyalist and traitor legions. For those who start with the traitor legion when the heresy started and want a different play and maybe painting style for a loyalist legion. Right, so he started with Death Guard and he's at the moment looking at possibly doing a whole Blood Angels army.
Oh, cool.
So, First thing is, he's talking about this in the classic styles of army we see, I think. Like a lot of people do, to be fair, like the keeping the Legion colours to the obvious Legion colours and the style of play towards their kind of characteristic style of play that we read about. The classic. Because otherwise you can do what you like, exactly. So I think that's fair enough. Yeah, and that's something not to forget. Don't forget that you don't need to pick a loyalist legion to have a loyalist force from it. And a traitor legion.
That's some of the coolest armies I see, actually, is where they mix that up a bit.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with you. When you turn around and see that loyalist Thousand Suns army or that, that traitor White Scar army, there's some really good, and it tends to be loyalist traitors that I see, but they do, some of them look amazing. Yeah, really do.
Totally agree.
Yeah. So never be afraid to do that, Again, a good opposite could be Night Lords to the Death Guard.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for me, because I did start off with my Iron Hands, and I wanted to do something different, so I went for traitors, I went for Night Lords, and of course, because I wanted some colour, they had blue in there, so I can see sometimes that it might be a colour thing. If you're painting the same army, you're getting sick to death of doing the same colours, then yeah, something like Blood Angels would be a real change, wouldn't it? That a bright red.
Emperor's Children.
Emperor's Children, yeah, definitely.
And they both have a lot of filigree. They both embellish their armour, in slightly different ways, but they're both about the bling.
Stylistically, completely different to Death Guard.
Yeah,
both of them.
Yeah, and play completely differently to Death Guard as well. And I'm sure the Blood Angels will as well, even beyond the rules we've got. So I think those two for that. Again, and what you're talking about, absolutely. So my Space Wolves are quite involved. They're not involved, but they take some time to paint, and I've done them, quartered and whatever. So I keep thinking about doing another Legion even before I've, got them on the table, as it were. But, for me, a complete opposite, and I've only just kind of realised it, is the Iron Warriors. They're very, like my Space Wolves have got the wolf talismans, they've got the knotted kind of rune work, and they've got the bits and pieces, and they're individualistic dudes. And then the Iron Warriors don't really care about whether their armor's dirty or not, just as long as it's functional. They're almost automatous in their kind of nature, to the point where their commanders look at them as numbers. We have 10,000 men. That's how they look at them and send them into war. And they're not about, they're kind of cold, slow, methodical, kind of, pounding numbers killer. Compare that to the Space Wolves' passion and everything else, individuality amongst them. Yeah, they're completely different.
Are you falling in love with the Iron Warriors again?
Yeah, always. Ever since.
Whenever I hear you talk about the Iron Warriors, I hear a wistful sound in your voice.
Ever since Graham McNeil wrote about them, and Chris Wright kind of carried it on. I think Perturabo, bless him, bless Perturabo. What a fool! But yeah, they're really cool. They're really cool. So that's my kind of version of it. But there's so many different things, and it kind of depends how you play your army. Iron Hands, a lot of people end up taking a lot of tanks.
Yes. So because the rules play into that way, don't they, as well?
Yeah, they can do. Yeah, absolutely. So you go from that to them maybe having a White Scars jet bike force, or Wolves again can do the run across the table thing quite well. Well, who else we got? I'm trying to think now of the legions. It's always good, isn't it? Imperial Fists. The ones you might look at where you might struggle a bit more are the ones who are more generalistic, so who don't kind of move towards one style of fighting.
Yeah,
so the Ultramarines
change it in different ways.
Yeah, the Ultramarines, and to a point, the Imperial Fists. The Ultramarines are all about that tactical flexibility as much as they can, and about not really shunning any style of war or whatever. So finding a diametric opposite for them would be having units that work by themselves, maybe. But then, is that really any other legion? Because, on the battlefield you don't kind of do that. So,
yeah,
I'm not too sure in that respect. What you could do is, even going beyond opposites in the legions, you could look at the Mechanicum. And don't forget, you've got the Mechanicum, 3 styles of Mechanicum. You've got the humans of the Zodiac Auxilia, the humans of the cults and militia, and demons.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes, I always forget about the sort of the Solar Auxilia and things.
I think a lot of people do,
and they can be great. They can be a great army, because I don't think I haven't seen that many armies around of them, and also colour schemes. There's so much you can do with them. So many different ways you can use different models. It'd be great if you really wanted just to change it up. It'd be a great way to sort of make it exciting again.
And and Solar Auxilia and Militia have their issues, as far as I'm concerned, as playable armies. Very different issues. The Militia are kind of restricted, although they've got loads of options. It's like, how many options do you really have, kind of thing. They're like spoiled by choice, but when you look at those choices, it's like you're going to buy a lot of dudes that are going to die, unless you're playing the whole cult horde with the rending and everything else. You're buying a lot of dudes who aren't going to do a lot, and then you're filling up with tanks. And Solar Auxilia can kind of be, they're a little bit of a weird army, the way people play them, and so you've got to look into that. But one thing I see actually that I don't see a lot is having proper allied forces. And it's not something that happens as much as... So, although I'm going to do Death Guard, I'm going to do Blood Angels, I'm going to do Night Lords, actually, my next army is going to be Imperial Fists with a small contingent of Dark Angel allies, or a small contingent of Solar Auxilia allies, or something like that. And there you can really flavour an army around, and it can give you more styles of play.
Yes.
A few more things to do. So whether that enhances the style of play you're already taking, or whether it contributes, or whether it balances your style of play. So if you're taking Iron Hands, you could take some Solar Auxilia's tanks that they've kind of requisite. You lot are coming with us.
Or change it up completely and say, let's take some White Scars because we need a bit of speed and a bit of maneuverability.
Absolutely. Or, we'll take some militia troops who've been told to hold this line no matter what. So there's lots of things you can do in that, which is not completely understandable, but it's not. I think it's something that gets overlooked a little bit.
Yeah.
And I understand why, because people love their legion or whatever, and so they want to collect that whole legion. But there's a lot of opportunity in that. Do different kind of stuff, which maybe could be exploited a bit more. Okie dokie. Right. Willard asked a load of questions, which generally need to take a bit more time with, I think. So what we're going to do is we're going to try, and I might even talk to him about getting him on, about turning them into parts of the show as themselves. One question he did ask, take us through all other heresy podcasts and tell us my favourites. Specifically asked at me, that was. I don't know whether that was a knowing thing or what, but there were a lot. someone put together for a gaming group a list of Horus Heresy resources, and they didn't have any podcasts. And he said, okay, what are there? And I tried to name them all off the top of my head, and I know I missed two that I couldn't remember the name of at the time. But there are a lot now. There's,
loads,
up
isn't
near
there?
20 or so that cover heresy regularly, if not being, 100% heresy. It's quite easy to tell you my favourite. The independent characters. They're a 40k podcast, but they're all about they're not about gaming and trying to achieve the most out of gaming in terms of doing the best. What they do is they look at the hobby as a community. Their piece on Gen Con, their last episode, they talked to a blind guy who was at did I say Gen Con? Adepticon. And he was there playing Warhammer without any sight at all, which was a really emotional story, actually, to listen to Carl talk to him. And, they'll talk about group dynamics, and they'll talk about, again, they do talk about 40k, obviously, but they also do book reviews. They're coming up. Their next episode will be the first part of their book 7 review, and they're brilliant. I looked at the independent characters for kind of the ideal podcast to work towards, and I know David did at Garage Hammer as well. So I would say that one. Sons of Heresy, I love.
Yeah, that's my favourite, Sons of Heresy.
It does help that I know the guys, well, and I think Age of Darkness, out of all the purely heresy podcasts, I think they've probably got the best organisation and kind of layout for their show. I don't necessarily agree with a lot of their views, but then that's not necessarily a bad thing in a podcast. But the others are all, there are some dry ones, like people say this is dry, I suppose. And then there are some that are much more entertainment based and everything else. One thing I will say is I was at Adepticon and someone asked me about a podcast I don't listen to, a heresy podcast I don't listen to. And I said I didn't listen to it. And he said, I'm so glad you said that, because as a listener, he felt pressured to listen to them all. Because we all plug each other to a greater or lesser extent, and sometimes you get the kind of go listen to them. And it's not meant like that, but it's meant in an encouraging way. But actually, that was coming across to at least one person that, if you didn't do that, you weren't a real heresy fan kind of thing. And I was like, no, there's I respect all the podcasts out there, but there are some I don't like, and there are some I just can't listen to. And that's not anything about them. That's just that I'm not their target audience. Much like a lot of them, you only have to look up reviews of this show or see people talking about it on Facebook to know that this is not the show for everybody. I've had some brilliant conversations where people have apologised to me after saying that they don't like my show. And I'm like, well, it's not your fault. You don't like the show. That's fair enough. If we all liked flipping heavy metal, then there wouldn't be any, Justin Bieber in the world.
Exactly, and we are Justin Bieber.
Absolutely, and some people might say that's a bad thing. It would be horrible if Taylor Swift was removed from this planet. That's all I can say. So,
Exactly.
A variety of tastes. There's a variety of ways to play the game. There's a variety of ways to listen to the game. There are podcasts out there who talk about army lists. There are podcasts like us that don't. There are podcasts who spend a lot of time talking about the fluff. There are podcasts where they don't know the fluff at all. So, yeah, whatever floats your boat. And the only way generally you'll find out whether you like them or not is by listening. Now, I will say there are one or two which, when I first listened to them, were objectively bad because of sound quality and things like that. Now that, understand that takes time, and, I'm not saying we're the best podcast for that at all, but we're listenable without a shadow of a doubt. And I know it's not easy always to get that. And I was actually talking to the Edge of Empire guys. Their second episode, I told them, I said I couldn't listen to it. Didn't listen to it. 5 minutes in, gave up. because the sound quality, the way I listen, was terrible, and I couldn't listen to it. And they knew that. They've taken that back. They've worked on it. They were asking me for advice, which, I'm like, don't do as I say. Just letting you know that it was bad.
It's like your painting advice, isn't it?
Exactly. And actually they've come up with a solution that sounds pretty good. So hopefully their third episode is going to be, worth listening to. Their first one was noisy, but it was listenable to. So just as long as for me, just as long as a podcast is listenable to, then it's going to be valuable to someone. The other thing is, I've listened to a lot of podcasts over time, and if you're negative about the hobby or GW or something like that, the chances are I won't listen, because I just don't want it. I'm just like, there's enough negativity out there. If you don't like something, don't talk about it. Simple. Move on.
Yep. Yeah, move on.
And there's a difference between criticising something that is relevant to your show with, appropriate criticism and comments to make it better, and just slagging something off. And I'm sure some people will listen to that and go, "Oh, he's talking about that part of our show." Well, again, some people love that kind of bitter old gamer kind of thing. When I was younger, we used to play this, and I'm like, cool, you can like it, but it's not for me. And that's, again, I'm not saying I'm better than anyone for that. That's just my outlook on what I want to spend my time listening to. Now I don't have, I can't listen to 40 podcasts a week anymore. I've had to cut them right down. It's amazing how ruthless you can get when it's like, no, I've got to lose another podcast. And you start to figure out which ones you really want then.
Yeah, I don't have a huge amount of time to listen to podcasts. So if I've got about 3 or 4 that I will always listen to, and everything else, it may download, but doesn't mean it's going to get listened to.
Well, that's
and then eventually iTunes sort of stops downloading it.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing, actually. Jason from Sons of Heresy was talking to me, and he very rarely listens to a whole episode of any podcast. What he does is he finds the bits he wants to listen to, and this is the hypocrisy is he doesn't put timestamps in on his show notes, so it's difficult to do that on his episodes, and he admits that, so that's fine. But yeah, he won't listen to a whole episode of my show. He will go, "Oh, they're talking about this, I'll listen to that bit." Cool. Well, there's nothing wrong with that either. So even if you have got these shows, just because 80% of that show isn't to your liking, that other 20% you might find really useful and engaging. Well, cool. Listen to that 20%, and then don't feel pressured into listening to the whole thing. Because, you try and keep up with all the Heresy podcasts, you're going to go mad.
Yes. Yeah, there's so many now.
Yeah. So and that's a good thing. More variety. Because when it was just me, I imagine those guys who had to listen to me because I was the only one. And then I will say that for a while it appeared that the Eye of Horus guys, 2 or 3 podcasts came out and appeared to be copying them in style. Thankfully, some of those have moved on and grown their own identities, which is what you need to do. You need to do what you do. And live and die by that, because otherwise it will be hard work and you'll not want to record and everything else. But, it's all gravy. Right, we should move on. What are some of the best narrative campaign stories, battles the guys have taken part in, and why were they so good? You haven't played in many of those, have you?
No.
I haven't played in
the best one I ever played in was Tak and Reaver.
Yeah, wow. What a statement. I can't talk about that one, personally. Something that I need to learn for my events, actually, is maintaining that narrative into the stories. So, if there is a narrative, and it doesn't impact my games, then I can quickly forget about that narrative and just have cool games. So having either the scenarios or special rules in that which reflect what is going on in that narrative.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I tried to do with Takareva by having the 5 different zones that you fought in. And then by giving out the relics and things like that, and also having the characters taking the damage over their fights as well. You know, some of those are things that are going to be carried on into all my events, I should think. I think moving forwards, I might look at different ways of doing the games. Certainly, London Heresy has a narrative through the games. So games 1 to 5 tell a story of sort, a very loose story, because the way I've done it has to be in such a way that even if the traitors are, you know, whoever's losing, they can still, that story still works for everyone. So, you know, it has a loose narrative, but that's actually better for that event where you have so many people. The smaller the event, the more interactive that narrative can be.
Yeah, because you can really tailor it and make sure everyone's having fun, whereas a big event, you've got to be careful that some people just don't get a decent game.
Yeah, you know, and there's just a lot more to do in between the games. Yeah, when the games are going on, actually, you get a bit of time, but in between and organising the games, you need, you know, as an event organiser, in that style of prescribed number of games, I need to make sure people are at tables playing games. Cool, crack on. You know, and there's things I can do. I gave out the characters last time. I could have made them, I could have written their stuff out in a way that they had the rules with it, so that you had to kind of read it, or I could have announced them earlier potentially and done things like that. There's ways and means that things can always be better. But again, there's no one way to tell a narrative story. So, yeah. The Durham event we went to was brilliant. The narrative was good. I say the one thing there was, and we fed it back to the guys, the one thing there was the narrative didn't necessarily feed into those games. I didn't necessarily look at where I was supposed to be fighting, what world I was supposed to be fighting on. So it becomes disjointed from the narrative in that respect. But doesn't mean it was still good. That would, to make it better, just to link those two, because they put a great deal of effort into the narrative. And it was cool that whoever was winning was getting a little bit of story as well. Or losing, and they were moving back and trying to take this world and what have you. But loads of different ways to do that. How are the possible 8th edition changes going to affect the dynamics of Legion armies? This is John Wyatt. Are we all going to have to buy new copies of all the books if the stats are changing? Blah, blah, blah. So, not going to get deep into 8th because we still don't know anything. We have possibilities of rules changes. So what did we say? So, always striking first on the charge. Armor, weapons having armor, rend values, as it were, so minuses to armor saves. I'm trying to remember what else was in there now. Possible. I mean, some of the things are kind of guesses, but possible vehicles losing hull points going to wounds. And then, movement stats, and there was something else. Right. We can't really talk about any of those rules because we don't know the other rules that go around them.
Yeah, so one rule might look ridiculous, but actually...
Yeah. Charge is striking first in combat. Well, we don't know if that affects all weapons or if some weapons will not be affected by it. We also don't know...
Or if you're in cover, that it means that you strike first.
Yeah, we've no idea. We also don't know if shooting's going to be more deadly. We don't know if it's going to be less deadly. We don't know about how moving across the board's going to work. We don't know how the weapon profiles are going to work, because do armor saves change? So... I saw someone say that power swords are now ineffective because of always striking first. I'm like, well, you don't know what a power sword does. So how can it be ineffective in that thing? You don't know. You could see the move back to like Terminators having the 3-up save on 2d6. You know, I don't know. I have no idea. So you really can't judge what's happening. I've said it before, I have faith in GW to make a game system which is fun. Now, we say that we're in this game for fun, for telling a story, so I don't see any reason to worry about it. some people might get annoyed. That's fair enough. And I'm sure there's something that I don't agree with in the end of the game.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll see new copies of the Red Books that will come out that will bring things in line, and there'll be erratas and FAQs.
Yeah.
And that's going to happen. There's no way that they're going to say, oh, well, everything ports over perfectly.
I've been seeing statements that say people know that, because we had the answer again at the Weekender that Heresy will remain a supplement to 40k. Again, sometimes when things come out of Forge World's mouths, we have to kind of nod and smile and accept that we don't know whether that answer is true or not. I have heard that they are going with 8th. It kind of makes sense. And I've heard they've got a plan. So they know what they're doing, they're aware, and they're getting ready for it. This is not dropping a new edition without kind of telling anyone. This is, I mean, they've told us, for crying out loud, that they're looking at rules changes, you know? So,
yeah.
Again, do I have faith in Forge World to do it? Yeah, to an extent, yeah. You know, I'm sure there's going to be the odd issue because they're going to have to change maybe a few different things than 40k does to fit in with the new 40k. But I'm sure the Legions will still play the same way. I'm sure that the fact we spend so much money on the books, the big black books, you know, if you're buying them just for the army list, you just have to, yeah, you just have to accept the fact that you're buying a really expensive army. They're not about just the army list. They're about the stories, the campaign, and everything else. And the campaign will port over in some way. It might need a few small changes, but it will port over. So again, I'm not worried about that. Those books are resources beyond army lists. Big time. And at the end of the day, if a lot of these changes are in the 40k rulebook, then 30k doesn't need to change them. So if the 40k rulebook, which you'll probably do, will have a new power fist, a new power sword, a new plasma pistol stat line, then none of that needs to change in the 30k book.
Yeah, because it just comes straight over, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. If all Space Marines now move 6, then that doesn't matter for any of the Space Marines, you know?
And for me, it's those key ones that it's usually where it gets tricky is where a special rule gets wiped out or completely changes and makes things unbalanced. You know, when things that, you know, when a universal special rule used to change and you used to look at it and go, oh my God, if you do that now, it does this, this and this. And then they rectify that, they change things around. The stuff that's actually written into the special rules into the books will probably stay pretty much the same, or they might need to tweak it ever so slightly if they've got to put different values into weapons and things.
You know, there are things like they might get rid of templates and go the way Age of Sigmar does. They might not. I don't know. But does that really affect things if it moves from a template hitting stuff to 1 or 2d6 worth of hits? Does that change or shots? Does that change much? Not really. So, yeah. You know, whatever's coming is coming, and we'll take a look at it. Some people say they'll still play 7th edition, you know, crack on. The numbers of people who maintain doing that tend to be very, very small. But I just don't see the point in getting too worked up about it until we have something that we can look at, play some games with. Don't just look at it and then dismiss it. But if you've got the toys, play a game with it, you know, for the sake of 2 hours or 2 games, 4 and a bit, 5 hours, just to double check, you might actually see more worth in what they've done than by just reading the rules and looking at it theoretically. So, yeah. Okay. What else? We'll do a few more. There's only a few more, and then we'll turn this off. There's something about taking photos of games. What I might do is get someone on who does that, because beyond just getting better lighting and stuff, I'm not 100% sure. Non-traditional matchups from more obscure bits of the fluff to inspire games and matchups. So instead of defaulting to the classic Ultras versus Werebearers, Imperial Fist versus Iron Warriors, all that kind of stuff, what are the other totally fluffy but less expected combos? Everything.
Yeah, everything's unexpected.
7.5 years, however many millions of Space Marines. You want to fight? Make up the fight. Yes, you've got the fights we know about in the stories. So on Moloch you had, what's he put here? Ultras versus Sons of Horus on Moloch. Yeah, there's that. How about having, I don't know, there's just so many. There's just like, pick a planet that hasn't been written about in a book, you know? Dark Angels versus Sons of Horus on Tiamat from Fallen Angels. That's something people forget about quite a lot. Space Wolves Venom just threw themselves at everyone they could, because that's what Space Wolves do.
That's what they do.
Yeah, the World Eaters just ravaged wherever they could. Part of Horus's problem in the Heresy, he wanted to drive to Terra, pick up a load of stuff and drive to Terra. Right from the start, on Istvan 3, Angron screwed with his plans by being too impatient. The World Eaters will fight anyone. So the World Eaters, just wherever they go, there's a holdout fortification, you know. Take a look at, whichever one it is, not Vengeful, it's the one I always call Vengeful Spirit, and it's not, it's the other one, Perturabo and Fulgrim. Where the Iron Warriors are fighting the Imperial Fists on some random planet. You know, they've sort of seeked them out, but the Imperial Fists have still got a stronghold there. Yeah?
I'm trying to think of that book now, I can't.
Oh God, why does it always, it's the ship one. Yeah, it's the, you know the one I mean.
I do know the one you mean, I can't think of the title.
I don't know why I always have a blank. It really, I think it's become a thing now. But yeah, you know, any of the traitor legions moving forwards, oh look, the Raven Guard took this planet and have left a small fortification here the Alpha Legion are going for resupply at this planet, and so are this other army going for resupply at this planet. There's just 1,000,001 reasons, and you know, I'm terrible at making up fluff, and I made up fluff for them. It's really not hard, you know. And the same goes for allies as well. You know, war on this scale will make allies of anyone. It just will. So even if you want to have something that isn't really allowed on the Matrix, if you pull your army list from the Crusade army list, then there's no reason why your Salamanders might not fight alongside some loyal Sons of Horus. You know? Yeah. There's just no reason, whether you play those rules, whether you change the rules up or anything, there is just no limit. 7.5 years. Millions of Space Marines, and they were making more all the time as well. You know? They just absolutely were. And even those legions which, like, not all the Thousand Sons made it back to Prospero before it got destroyed. You know, smashed to bits. Not all the Sons of Horus were on Isfam. Not all the wolves made it to the burning of Prospero either. Not all the Ultramarines were at Calth. So take your however many troops, take them somewhere else. If you do want to delve into the book, there are things like the Pharos, so you could have Night Lords versus Ultramarines. You can go into the books, maybe go into those some of the novellas as well, a bit more. So there's some great stuff with Raven Guard versus some Mechanicum troops, things like that you can really look at. But there's so much stuff. It's just ridiculous amount of stuff. I mean, even in the books we see Imperial Fist scout troops, you know. There's just all the scope in the world. Just let your imagination run wild. Which is kind of a wussy answer, but I also like the idea of not getting into that grain of, oh look, there's a Space Wolf player and a Thousand Sons player turned up at my event, I shall put them together so they can fight on Prospero. Because the chances are every event those two guys have gone to, they've been paired up against each other. Yeah. Because they're the only Thousand Sons of Space. Now that might change, you know, but that happens. and that will happen a lot. And I understand why, but it doesn't have to happen, you know. And also, as well, the other thing is you can reverse the roles. So if you do have an Imperial Fist player and an Iron Warriors player and you want to put them together, have the Iron Warriors defending and the Imperial Fists attacking.
Yeah.
Because no one ever really thinks that way, you know? Because the Imperial Fists defend walls and the Iron Warriors, well, actually, if the Iron Warriors have got something the Imperial Fists want, they're going to go and get it. So feel free to do that. Something here about Shadow War in the Heresy. There are more than one group of people working on the Heresy rules for it. Most of them utilising the Chaos Space Marine rules and then adapting them. I'm sure we'll talk about that more at some point, but there are people out there doing it. Go to Crusade and Heresy and Heresy 30k, the 30k forums. Another place they're doing that.
It wasn't going to be long, was it, before that happened?
No, it did. This happened like when it was announced. From the fluff, how about a history of the heresy? Maybe. That would take some, it would take some organising to plan out, but might revisit that because maybe that's something that newer players don't know. So I'm sure some of the old vets are like, oh yeah, but, something we can do. And then Brian Andrews, Titans, and more specifically in comparison of the new Uber Knight and the classic Warhound. So that's the Knight Porphyrion, the Castus Knight Porphyrion and the classic Warhound. Warhound's better. I can tell you that. Different roles though, different roles.
Indeed, yeah.
Can you compare them? I mean, they're both going to pump out a load of damage and kill lots of troops. The Warhound's
quite vulnerable to being smashed up.
Yeah, the Warhound's a bit better against vehicles just because the templates, they're fine, but if vehicles are by themselves, that's one hit, a big template's one hit. And yes, it's strength 10, but you got a flare shield, that's going down to strength 8. That's pretty big. Ion shield versus the thingy shield on the Warhound. Void shield.
The void shield.
Depends if you can get around it and how lucky you get. Because if you can just roll 4 ups and you can only offer one point of view to your opponent, then the ion shield's actually going to be better than a void shield.
Yeah, because void shields can be if you want to take something down like that, you target it out, don't you? Think, well, I'll use low power stuff, take down the void shields, and then fire the big weapons.
I mean, the Warhound sits in the corner. The one thing I've got with both of them is you can sit them in the corner of a table and do lots of damage, and that's a bit dull. So I tended to find that my Porphyrion kept moving around. Also, you want to get the difference between, you got strength 10 actually. Do you even want to be firing that at front armor 14 if their side armor's 13? You want to keep moving it around for more chances of penetrating.
I saw one not converted, but made in a very walking stance, and it looks so much cooler.
Oh, cheers.
Striding forward. So, those ones that are just rooted to the spot don't look quite as cool.
Mine's kind of stationed, set itself to fire. But
Did you just make sound effects?
Yeah. That's what I do when I'm playing the game. The Warhound is better, but you pay more points for it.
Yeah, it is.
It's as simple as that. It's different. They're different beasts at the end of the day. They do a similar job, but they do it differently, if you get what I mean. And the thing is, you can have so many different guns on the Warhound.
Yes,
you can have a few different guns. The Porphyrion is pretty much how it is. You decide whether you have autocannons or las cannons in its two shoulder mounts, or whether you have an anti-air or an anti-infantry missile battery. That's to be honest, pretty minimal things.
Minimal choices until they bring out some new variants.
Yeah, I prefer the look of the Porphyrion. I like the Warhound. I don't want to build one because apparently they're atrocious.
Yes, I've heard that as well.
And I don't know, something about them, they don't feel quite as imposing as they should, but that Porphyrion just looks sweet.
Cool.
You know, hey, that's my thought on it. Yeah, so was there anything you wanted to add to any of them before we...
Porphyrion, cool, yes, I agree. That's all I've got to add.
Well, there was one we did miss there, but I think we've gone on long enough, so again, we'll come back to that. It's a nice long segment. We'll come back and we'll talk to Michael about Fabius Bile. Back once again is Michael. Haven't been on for a couple of episodes, so hello again.
Hi, Greg.
How you doing?
I'm good, thanks.
Excellent. And we will be talking Primogenitor.
Yes, indeed. A bit of Fabius Bile.
Indeed. The story of Fabius Bile. Who wrote it again?
Josh Reynolds.
That's right, Josh Reynolds. So, yeah, I mean, we might as well go straight in. Again, this is a 40k book, but highlighting it because obviously Fabius Bile is a big player from the Heresy days in the Emperor's Children, and in fact, you know, he hasn't changed a huge amount, has he?
No, I think that's right. It's the book, in a similar way to some of the other sort of Chaos Marine stories we've had recently, is a real close look at Fabius, how he thinks and how he works, and it's so interesting to see that he's not, you know, in the 10,000 years since the Heresy, he's not degenerated, he's not turned to worship of chaos or anything like that, but in fact the very opposite.
Yeah, I think this is part of the Games Workshop have changed the way they approach character books a little bit over the last few years, and now we're getting, you know, we went through that period which you did the interview with Laurie about, where we had all the tie-in stuff, and it was more about selling, you know, or combining the sale to create this hype and this, you know, this thing around a release, whereas we seem to have got to a point where it's like, no, these are the characters you've always heard about, but let's actually knuckle down and have a look at these characters, because Fabius Bile, you know, a while ago was seen as that kind of cackling madman Frankenstein, you know, kind of just lost the plot.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I've not really come across, or I hadn't come across Fabius Bile outside of the Heresy that many times. I think he's the antagonist in some of the Blood Angels books, maybe, and he's sort of there in the background in the odd case. But he was just this sort of moustache-twirling villain in a lot of the sort of depictions. There had never been that sort of layers to him. And I guess the Talon of Horus, the Ahriman series, these have sort of reminded Black Library that actually people really want to get under the skin of some of these core characters. Yes, more depth to the books as well. And we look at what we've read, you know, of Fabius in the Heresy as being this person who was just obsessed. And in fact, that short story of Chirurgeon, is it? Yeah, Chirurgeon, however you pronounce that.
Yeah, whatever. That really goes into it, you know, his initial steps into why he wanted to play around so much with Space Marines and see what was going on, what was ticking, what made them work, and how that drove his inquisitiveness and his desire and his methodology to where we see him in Fulgrim. And as we say, we get to Primogenitor now, that's happening, you know, relatively recently to the new fluff. And his motives don't really change. And that's one of the big things. There are various parts in this book where he deals with, particularly a word bearer in the book. And they're completely at opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to renegade Space Marines. Absolutely. I mean, Fabius is essentially the ultimate atheist. He fundamentally doesn't believe in the Chaos Gods. He doesn't believe that they are gods. And that's so cool. It's really interesting. And you're right, you know, the contrast with Sakara, the word bearer. Fabius values this guy for his abilities and his skills, but there's some definite condescension there. Just a little bit, yeah. And yeah, he has rational explanations for everything that goes on. And I wonder if that was an appeal for Josh in writing it.
I'm sure it was. I don't know if you've got the limited edition with the creepy flesh coat sort of cover. In for anyone who hasn't got that, there's an author's note at the start where Josh talks about always trying to find the in to the character, like what's their motivation, and he says Fabius is altruism. Now that might sound completely bonkers, but actually you read the book and you sort of see what he's getting at. That Fabius he genuinely believes that what he's doing, that his work is important and he's doing it for the benefit of mankind. Now, if he were to succeed, it would be mankind in a shape that we wouldn't recognise, perhaps. But that's what he's doing it for. He wants to help, but not everyone would think it's help.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is to the vast majority of people, it's a very perverse altruism, but it's there, and it's, as with any villain that you believe, that character themselves has to believe what they're into. So, he truly believes that he's doing this thing for humanity. And that actually, a lot of what's gone on in the galaxy has just got in the way of his plans. And the fact that only him and however many others are the only ones who can see that doesn't change anything.
No, that's right.
But yeah, it's really cool. And the book is not written from his perspective.
Well, not entirely. I mean, there's some parts of it are through his eyes.
He's not the main driving character that we look at.
No, so I guess in that respect, it's closer to the Talon of Horus than it is Ahriman, for example. Or at least the first Ahriman Exile, is seen through his eyes. Talon of Horus, obviously, seen through Chaon's eyes. In this case, our equivalent of Chaon is another Emperor's Children apothecary, right, called Oleander, who, I mean, I don't remember that name cropping up before in the Heresy. I don't know if it's been snuck in there somewhere.
I can't think off the top of my head. With that many characters there are now, it's hard to keep track. Absolutely.
But I guess should we talk a little bit about sort of what the plot line is? How much do you want to go into?
We can lay out the initial part and kind of look at where it goes without giving too much away, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think that it ties in nicely then. So Oleander, who is he's sort of an interesting Emperor's Children in that character, and he's not fully given himself over to excess, but he's sort of embraced it to a point while retaining, I guess, an apothecary's sort of sense of thinking. He's the driving force, like you say, behind the story, and he's an ex-pupil of Fabius's, who was a fundamental part of the consortium. Fabius's sort of, I don't know what you'd call them, they're not really a war band, this collection of apothecaries and like-minded individuals.
It's almost like the Victorians would have their royal societies.
That's right. That's a really good analogy for it.
So yeah, all these people who think a certain way or have a core belief which threads through what other people believe, but might spur off into different places. And Fabius has collected these people into this one area. They've come to him to learn. He is the master. He would be their Newton or whoever, at the head of this, that everyone looks up to. But even in that, they're always looking at each other. Yeah, it's a real interesting kind of dynamic.
Yeah, definitely. A bunch of renegade Space Marine apothecaries and assorted ne'er-do-wells. So there's a lot of tension there, a lot of conflict, but they're sort of still, at least half-heartedly working towards the same thing. So Oleander is returned from his travels and has come with a proposition for Fabius. And it sort of involves, without giving too much away, the attempt to take a craft world. And Fabius is obviously going to have certain things that he's interested in from an Eldar craft world. Oleander has his own motivations for encouraging Fabius into this enterprise. I think that's a fairly safe explanation for the big picture of the plot, right?
Yeah, definitely. In the true way of chaos. all those grand ambitions from the heresy and whatever without an Abaddon to keep things going. They go to selfishness, and they all want something out of what they're going to be doing, and then there's going to be games played within that, and even more characters who want their own things from it as well.
Yeah, and it becomes quite an interesting sort of, for me at least, an unexpectedly twisty plot, and perhaps I wasn't quite expecting that, with lots of genuinely interesting characters coming into conflict. And it sort of takes a while till you really figure out what's going on. There's an interesting subplot around the Eldar. I think it's really nicely done, and it allows us to sort of take Oleander on an arc. At least Fabius doesn't really change throughout the plot, but we get to see and learn a little bit about him. I think probably is setting things up for what will happen next. But along the way, Fabius then just comes out as this amazing sort of weird blend of villain, sort of university professor, Sherlock Holmes, sort of amazing mixture.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of that. Yeah. Very aloof from those around him as well. You know, he's working, it is like that. He's that genius who's working on a slightly different level from the rest, and they all know it. And as you say, there's all kinds of, like, everyone in this story has a reason for wanting like things to happen, and they're almost all kind of, again, they've got that same sliver of kind of a unified desire, but actually 90% of what they want is very different from each other. And you've got very strong characters and people who think they're strong, and then others as well who are maybe more loyal, and it creates some real tensions as you go through the book, which is, it's good to read.
Absolutely. And those tensions are possibly more interesting because they all need Fabius for something, one way or another. He's this sort of center of the web that everyone wants him to be doing something, and he's, I guess, quite a strong theme of it is that Fabius is ploughing his own furrow. He's determined that he's not going to lose focus. He knows what his end game is, and whatever else somebody might want of him, he'll go along if it suits his needs. Yeah. But he recognizes, I think, that people need him, and he's sort of such a manipulator, that he's capable of dealing with that.
Yeah, there's some very, very blasé moments, but that's because, you know, this character knows that he can get away with so much because he is needed, and he also feels confident that at the end of it, he can put them in their place and get what he wants anyway. Yeah,
definitely. And then I guess underpinning that is this sense of, if anyone has read Chirurgeon, anyone sort of followed Fabius and the Heresy, and know a little bit about how the Emperor's Children obviously had a major problem, sort of Great Crusade era, and Fabius is dying. Essentially, Fabius has died. He keeps cloning himself. Yeah. Well, isn't one of his titles the Clone Lord? Which I think I'd assumed was reference to Horus, perhaps, because we know that he's attempted to clone Horus,
and
successfully or otherwise.
And Ferris. It's more than one point mark he's cloned.
Yeah, that's right. But so he's sort of degenerating before his own eyes. And that's quite vivid and quite gruesome. You know, the first time we meet him, he's basically operating on himself. And it's pretty nasty stuff.
Yeah. And but, also as well, the reason he wants to stay alive again, it goes back to his belief about what he can do for humanity.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you know, he'd be quite happily roll off the mortal coil. But actually, this weird sense of, as you say, altruism is the thing that's keeping him doing what he's doing, which is kind of mind-bendingly weird to look at.
Totally. There's just, for me, there's so many interesting things about this book, because I think Josh has really got under the skin of Fabius. I don't know if you listened to, it was a few years ago, I think it was about 2014's Advent Calendar. There was an short audio called Fabius Bile, Repairer of Ruin. And he was this sort of wonderfully over-the-top, cackling, I don't know how to describe it, just this thoroughly entertaining voice. And I think it was possibly his assault on Monarchia that it was covering. And at that point, I thought, oh, this is great. Reynolds just seems to have a handle on Fabius. But then you flash forward to the book, and it's so much more than just that over-the-top sort of daft sense of villainy. And there's such a weight of sort of interest behind him. He quite often references the heresy, characters that we're familiar with from the heresy, whether that's Fulgrim or Eidolon or Abaddon. He's quite condescending towards Ezekiel, as he calls him, or Ezekiel, however we're supposed to say that these days. But he's just, there's this real sense of the strong voice coming out that I've not come across really in 40k before.
Yeah, no, it's great. It is really good. It brought a character, because the main reason I read it was because I'd heard you talk about it and a number of other people saying how good it was, and that drew me into it. And I wasn't disappointed. Beforehand, a book about Fabius Bile, to be honest, I probably could have left it without ever, second guessing my decision to do that, to be honest. But it became something that now I'm probably going to have to read the next one, which is always the problem with these books. But even through to the end of the story, it's like, okay, well, he's got to where he's got to. Okay, how's he going to deal with this moving forwards? Again, that's the idea of the end of a book like this, and it works, to be fair. So, absolutely,
and it is. You mentioned the next book. It is clearly written with the sort of the more modern Black Library approach of series, which is not necessarily one immediately following on, but setting up themes and setting up characters that can roll over. I think Josh has talked about the fact that he is in the middle of writing the next one, but there's already a whole wealth of other stuff out there. So if anyone is interested in this, that audio from a couple of years ago is definitely worth checking out. There are, I think, 3 short stories, one of which is only at the moment in the limited edition. So that's called The Howling Ship. There's one called A Memory of Tharsis, which has just become available through the week on Black Library. And then there's one called Prodigal, which was a 2016 advent. And they sort of, I asked Josh about this and whether one should read some of them before or after. And he's made a conscious effort, I think, to write stories that build up the character, but don't tie necessarily strictly into the plot. So in the book, it references, there's literally a single reference to a name, Melusine, which is a character from Prodigal. There's a single reference to a sort of a dark mechanica Magos, whose name I forget, and on a planet whose name I forget, that references A Memory of Tharsis. So it's quite cleverly done that he's sort of laid these little breadcrumbs, but he's building up this big picture of the character. And if you like short stories, these are really good fun, really worth reading that as well.
Awesome, yeah. And those kind of things are great because it doesn't harm the people then who pick up this book and don't want to go and hunt for the shorter stories, which is good. Yeah. There was one other, it almost is a character in itself, part of this book, which really pleased me because it's something hopefully we're going to see more from Black Library of. I didn't see for a very long time, and that was the world they visited in the Ioterra, is this just kind of trade world or area, and it's one of those things where 4 years ago it's like that would have been left out because it's not a big fighty scene, but what it did do was kind of show you that actually, yes, there are real world kind of, you need an economic structure and you need a societal structure and everything else, where they go to kind of get their information, that typical kind of place where people have to go to get information.
Yeah, definitely. It almost felt a little bit like a sort of Mos Eisley or somewhere like that, a little bit on the fringes. I think it was called Sublime, the world, wasn't it? It was essentially a world that was achingly slowly dying, essentially sort of exploding, and there's this sort of stream of demons, sort of, I don't know if you'd say coming in or coming out of it. There's this whole really cool, like I said, sort of world building built up around this, and then once they're on there, there's a real sense that it's that he's figured out how it works, like you say. It's a place where you see Eldar and don't bat your eyelids. You see all kinds of Xenos race. It's the kind of world you'd expect to see written about in a role play kind of book, a setting book. Yeah, definitely. And I guess we perhaps should have touched on this earlier. I mean, it's the sort of, it's your Eisenhorn style as opposed to your Space Marine battle style book, isn't it? So there are big fights, and it's not really a spoiler to say that they end up fighting on a craft world, and they fight on this world of Sublime. And there are battles, plenty of action for people who really love that sort of stuff. But it's really not focused on that. And it's not Fabius Bile marching at the head of an army. This is a much smaller scale book in terms of its set pieces.
Yeah, and at that time opens up the galaxy that bit more.
Exactly, and that's always interesting. It's like the cool bits in a film where they just walk through somewhere and you're like, spend more time here. I want to go and explore.
Absolutely, yeah, really good, really enjoyable. Is there anything else you want to bring up before we close up?
Well, really, it's one of those books that there's so much of interest, but you sort of give things away if you go into too much detail. I know I picked it up as soon as I could because I'm a big fan of Josh's. I think his writing's getting better and better with each book. And I've seen a lot of people talking about this on the internet, a lot of people that I've met. And it's one of the few Black Library books recently that seems to be getting universal appeal. I think Josh was maybe a bit unsure about how successful it would be. For me, I think there's been such a positive upswell. So anyone who hasn't read it, please do go read it, evangelize it like all the rest of us are doing. The more of this sort of stuff that we can talk about that we really like, the more we're going to get. We've seen Abaddon, we've seen Ahriman, we're going to see Lucius some point this year.
Yep. We got the Carrion Throne and that kind of thing where it's that again, absolutely. That kind of focus. Yeah, and it has to sell well, otherwise they will retreat back to what they know sells. So,
definitely.
But I think it will. I think that's showing for itself, and I think I definitely think that those future books will as well. But as you say, go out and read it. It is a cracking read.
It's really good fun, and it is fun. It's got a sense of humour. It's not as tongue in cheek as the stuff that Josh has done with Lucas the Trickster, which is deliberately really sort of pushing the edges of what 40k does. But it's occasionally laugh out loud. It's certainly snigger inducing at the sort of sarcasm and sharp wit that these apothecaries approach each other with. So it's not the sort of book that many people will have read before with Black Library, but I think people will hopefully be pleasantly surprised. Yeah,
fingers crossed. Awesome stuff. Cool. Thanks for coming on. We'll have to select what book we're going to do next.
Yeah.
If anyone's got any real kind of hankering for us to do a book in this style, which is very different from kind of what we do on After Illinois and everything else, but I think then write in, because we can have a little look at that. Obviously, there's got to be a Horus Heresy focus to most of these, and that's fine with a character like Fabius who spans those exactly. 2 timepieces. But we'll have to see if anyone's got any ideas.
Yeah, always happy to talk about this sort of stuff. It's lovely with anything that links between the 2 settings, so it's always a pleasure.
Definitely, and go check out Tracker Words blog, because there's loads more than can be done on a podcast on there.
Absolutely, trackerwords.com.
There we go.
Have a look.
Nice and easy. Awesome stuff. Right. Thanks for joining us, and
pleasure.
And we'll play some music.
Cool. See you later.
Cheers. We're just about to head into another segment on creating content through the community, like we did with Lex and Drake. This time, the idea was to get a YouTuber on and to talk about the possibilities to showing how you can do that. It became quite apparent, as you will see here during the interview, that David has gone for a high-end product. In kind of after doing this interview, I was trying to get other people on. Unfortunately, one of them fell through because it was just unworkable, and others haven't got back to me to show something that's done with a little bit less involvement, shall we say. So please don't take this as being the only way to get involved in a YouTube, to have a YouTube channel, but it's the way David wants to do it for his product, and there are other ways. I will try and get another. I wanted to put another interview in before this one to show the two different styles, but it didn't quite happen with schedules and things like that. So, yeah, I think this is really good. I think David talks very well. As I say, this is all about a high-end product, and there are different levels of products. So remember that not everything. When David talks about some of the things, it might not. You don't necessarily have to do it as involved as he does it, or in the manner that he does it. So bear that in mind as you listen to the interview. Okay, well, joining me now, we have David. Some of you might recognise him, but I'll let him introduce himself and what he does.
Thanks, Greg. Well, my name's David Brains. Hopefully you at home have seen my channel, the 30k channel, which is on YouTube, and maybe you found your way to our Instagram and Facebook page. But I'm a YouTuber, and I put out Horus Heresy exclusive battle reports for you guys to see at home. So hopefully you've seen those, and we try to go for more of a narrative-driven, fluffy lists rather than sort of a hardcore gamer list. But yeah, we're trying our best.
Yeah, and the show's growing all the time and changing and trying to find its feet. Even now, as you go on, there's always something to improve, isn't there? We find these things.
Yeah, exactly right. When I started, it was just me and a couple of guys in a village hall, and since then we've progressed to our very own studio that we run a club out from. And one of the great things about the channel is that we can adapt quite quickly to whether that be the terrain or armies. We can pull from such a vast array of armies out in the community there, because everyone's quite keen to come on and showcase themselves and their army, and we can accommodate quite nicely. So currently we're looking at different types of battlefield and new types of terrain, and we're always trying to get, fluffy armies playing against each other. So we're trying to create a bit of an aesthetic as well as good battle reports. So, and as the new book 7 came out, we're trying to get Space Wars and Thousand Suns on as fast as possible. We're trying to get Custodes and Sisters, and so we can react quite quickly to the new armies and books that come out. So we can think on our feet quite quickly. It's good fun.
Awesome. So let's get right back to the beginning. When did you start in wargaming?
I think I was about 12, 13 perhaps. I grew up in Peterborough my whole life, and the Games Workshop store opened up, and a friend and I went there, and we essentially started in Epic. I was Orcs, my friend was Eldar, and my beginnings were firmly set in Epic, I loved it. It was so good. And then I started into 40k, and we went to Blood Angels and Space Wolves, and then it just continued on from there. Really, I kind of just collected stuff that I liked rather than whole armies, and then I did a bit of Necromunda, and then I took a bit of a big gap. Really, I moved abroad to another country for a while, didn't really do very much, and then it only wasn't until about 4 years ago when I moved back to England that I really got into 30k, and I started off with Imperial Guard, kind of got halfway through that, and then Mechanicum hit the scene, and then I sold all my Imperial Guard to get into Mechanicum, and I've never stopped since. So the Mechanicum have been built up over the last 3 years or so. So to the point where they are now, which is pretty much critical mass for me. I think I'm nearly finished with the Mechanicum, but you never know. They keep bringing nice new stuff out, so we'll see.
Don't they just? Yeah. So was it you were keenly looking for heresy stuff, or did you just happen to notice that they'd started up doing the heresy, or?
Well, they did a bit of an intro, didn't they? Because they brought out different the different vehicle variants. And there was like a Sakaran floating around, and then they released the Imperial Armor books that gave 40k units access to these relics of Dark Age of technology, and they slowly crept their way in, didn't they? Yeah. And then all of a sudden, we got book 1, and it was like, wow, this is different, and this is cool, and here we are. But for me, it was, having an army of monstrous creatures, and that was that's what I wanted. It was either Tyranids, because you could do that, and then loads of little Gribblies running around, or I went to 30k and did Mechanicum, and that was it for me. Done.
Well, some might say you chose the right army to go with in terms of being able to play the game. But yeah, certainly. So you were right there as the Heresy came out. I must admit I was the same, and it was the Thanatar model that got me buying Mechanicum, because it was just amazing. And so different from everything else as well at the time.
Yeah, and I think so. And I think the thing that differentiates it 30k, 40k for me is that 30k, the models are quite intricate and they've got loads and loads of detail, and the models are fantastic for 40k. There's no doubt about that. But 30k brings a different aesthetic. I think they're a little bit cleaner lines, and I think they're actually easier to paint as well, which attracted me quite a lot. You know, if you look at like the Cataphon destroyers for 40k, and then you look at like the 30k equivalent, which is the Myrmidon destructors, they're just a little bit simpler, I think, and they look a little different. And you're right, the Thanatar for me was just awesome. And then the Castellax, Thanatar, I thought, wow, I need an army of those. You know, let's have them.
Awesome. So at which point did you start thinking about a YouTube channel?
Oh, well, a long time ago. I lived in New Zealand for a long time, and I watched a lot of battle reports while I was out there. And I thought, maybe I could do that. But I tried to explore that a little bit whilst I was there, but the community quite wasn't there, and I didn't have enough money to do it, as well as all the other stuff I was doing. And then when I finally moved back to England, I talked to a few guys, and you know, I was watching people like Tabletop Tactics and a few others, and I thought, you know, I think they're great, and I think I can do that too, but I want to do it slightly different. And it only wasn't until about a year ago that I thought, you know, I wrote on a massive piece of A4 paper, you know, everything that I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it. And eventually the money came together, and I talked to some friends, and I said, yeah, you know, maybe what you can offer is something a little bit different. And here we are, you know, so it finally came around. But Greg, it was a long time in the planning, I can tell you, as with anything like this, you know.
Sure. So what were the differences you highlighted from, because we got the WW 40k guys down in Australia. Yeah. We've got people like Tabletop Tactics, the guys in Canada. I can't remember the name. The guys who do the shop, and they used to do the shop and all that. Mini Wargaming. And you got people like Winter's SEO, and you can name plenty more that do things. So what was it that you felt that you could bring that was slightly different to what you'd seen?
For me, there's a couple of things really. I'm perhaps a little bit more conservative, and when I say conservative, I mean I don't like swearing. Although when you talk to me in public, I swear like an absolute trooper. But I think if you're going to market yourself to the world, I guess, and you want to be family friendly. So swearing really turns me off, and I watch a lot of battle reports, and there's a lot of swearing and a lot of cussing goes on, and for me that turns me off. So I figured if that turns me off, that's going to turn a lot of other people off. So that was top on my list. And then also, for me, gaming is all about the aesthetic. So you've got two good-looking armies on great terrain, but then when you film that in your kitchen or your front living room, the two don't match, because you've got these lovely armies and some lovely terrain, and then you've got a picture of, you know, your wife and kids, and then your TV and your book collection, and the two don't quite work. It's like filming a Star Wars movie in, you know, in a convenience store. Do you know what I mean? It's really weird. So for me, and also your eye is detracted elsewhere, because you think, oh, that's a nice picture frame, or I've got the same carpet as that, or that's the same telly, and then all of a sudden, all the cool conversation and the armies, it loses itself. And for me, the booth that I built, the big black booth that houses the table, that was essential, because it brings the focus back to the table and back to the models. But then the issue with that is if your attention is only drawn to the models and the table, both have got to be fantastic. So it's really, you know, and then you start, you know, I think I kind of pitch myself at more of a high-end aesthetic rather than super competitive and trying to get people to play that way. It was very much narrative driven and aesthetically driven. And I just think that's my point of difference, I think.
Yeah. I think that comes across on the show. you say about the swearing thing, it's exactly the same with me. Our first event we did in Cardiff, and in the pub, everyone's like, "You swore, Greg," and I'm like, "I swear way too much. I just don't do it on a podcast." Much the same. I don't mind a bit, but I'm not. It doesn't have to be there for me. And regularly, I get people telling me, great, you don't swear, so I can listen to it with the kids around. I can do this. And I don't think you lose too many people by not swearing.
No,
but
no,
every now and then
you can have a lively conversation with someone without it, I think. And the thing is, on the videos, I'm not very good at that. I'm not very good at I think I'm better behind the camera, building the stuff and presenting the stuff, as in getting the model sorted and getting the table sorted, and then I think I leave it up to other people to have that banter and to have that kind of fun with each other, because I'm not very good at it. I wholly admit that. Yeah.
I mean, I've seen a lot worse. Don't worry about that. But if you've got two people there as well, what you do is you guide the conversation, you keep it on track, which is, again, something that I value. Your videos, you've got down to about an hour and a half kind of thing, roughly, the last one or two.
Still trying to get that down as well. They are a little too long for my liking, but
sure.
but as you said, we're improving, hopefully, every game and trying to get it right.
Yeah, that's one thing actually I found Winter's SEO videos recently, and he does an even more condensed kind of quick run through, and I find them great for a different time scale to watch. If something goes on for 2.5 hours on a video, I'm a little bit more kind of, my attention's waning a little bit now.
That's right.
And it's hard, and some people are going to love the long ones, some people are going to love the shorter ones, and that's something you just kind of have to decide what you're comfortable with, make the product you want. And if you want it, other people will want it.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think we're still yet to find our magical, I think for me, I can't do what I do in an hour, but I also know that 2 hours is too long for some people. So I think it's just finding that balance, isn't it? And if I still want to keep what I'm doing, it needs to be perhaps an hour 15, hour 20, something like that. I'm not sure, but I don't want to miss out too much because I think when we're not rolling dice, you've still got the models to look at and you've still got the battlefield to look at, and I think that's important as well. So
I think the key thing is, I listen to quite a few podcasts, particularly a couple of Warhammer ones where people will do the Arnold Rimmer thing, where they're like, well, I rolled a 4 and he rolled a 3 and nothing really happened. And I'm like, well, if nothing's happened, you don't need to mention it.
Yes.
Like, nothing's happened. Move on. This is time I can't get back in my life.
Yeah, you are so right, and we have done that. I've got 4 games in the bank already that I've yet to edit and put up, and a lot of those we've just skipped over we filmed it, and then I've gone, well, actually, nothing really happened. So what we'll do is we'll just do an overview of the last 2 shooting phases or the last 2 turns of shooting, and then I'll just cut it all, and then, because you're right, it does just waste people's time. Oh, I rolled a 2, I rolled a 2, I missed, I couldn't wound, I couldn't damage, and nobody wants to see that. They just want the highlights, don't they?
Yeah, you don't mind when it's that big thing that really needs to happen. There's some drama involved, and
sure.
that's the balance, I suppose, you've got to find on the editing floor, as they say.
Exactly.
So I know a couple of guys who've been up because you utilise, as you say, the public, the fans of the show and everything else. When you started, how many of those people did you know?
Well, that is a really great question. When I first started, I knew some guys in Cambridge. There are 4 guys, sorry, and they were really keen to help me out. So they were the first games on the channel, the first 2 games that we filmed in Huntingdon near Cambridge. And since then they were really popular. And then I've had people contact me saying, I quite fancy coming on, how about it? And I've gone, yes, because one thing I found is Mechanicum games aren't that popular on the channel. If you compare them to like a Marine on Marine, they're really, really popular. So the Mechanicums aren't so much. And because I've only got Mechanicum, if I just did every month a mech game, then no one's going to be watching because they're not as popular. Sure. So for me, it was really important to involve everybody in the community, because it becomes, although it's my channel, it becomes their channel as well. And also, if we've only got 2 or 3 different armies on the channel, then people we'll get bored of those people quite quickly. And I think it needs to be different every month. And also, if you involve the public and people in the community, then they'll support you even more, won't they? Because they'll come back and, we can have Bob from Birmingham and Mark from Southampton, and then we can pitch them against Bert from Scotland. Do you know what I mean? We can just switch it up, and then that gives the channel so much more appeal, because we can do all of the legions. We can do Solar, we can do Mechanicum, we can do everything, rather than just Mechanicum and World Eaters and Raver Guard, and they're the only 4 armies we've got. So I think it helps. But going to all these events recently, all the Warhammer World events and the Open Day, the Horus Heresy Weekender, I'm meeting so many new people, and people are saying, you're doing a great job, or you're doing, well, actually this isn't working. Have you thought about? Well, no, I haven't. I'll try it, and we've made loads of new friends through the channel, and we've got so many games lined up. I think we're booked out to July, every weekend until July, because people just want to get on, and it's cool because we all have those games at home where you wish the world was watching because it went really well for you, and if you can film and have witness your game against someone, we have a lot of people say to us, oh, I want to beat my mate on the channel, or I want to beat the Death Guard, or I want to beat the Iron Warriors, or whatever. And it's such a great outlet to do that, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. It's there for prosperity as much as anything else. It's like, that's never going away. Tough luck. High stake games. So yeah, there's, with these, so people are coming to you now. As you say, they're coming to you asking to be on the channel.
Yeah.
Kind of how easy has it been for you to say yes to people, or do you have a process? Or, because obviously you've got, you want the game to be played a certain way with, armies that look, they don't necessarily have to be the best technically painted armies, but they have to look good, which is two different things. I think it's fair to say as well.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, you look at some brilliant painted armies, they don't look that great from a distance. But so is it a case of like sending you pictures and things like that and talking to them to see if they're,
yes, that
kind of way?
Yeah, I mean, you could have the most beautifully painted army in the world, but if the guy in front of the camera isn't very charismatic, it doesn't make for a good game. So for me, it's a mix of everything. And what I do is I base everything off myself, right? So I'm not the most amazing painter in the world, but my stuff's okay, right? And again, I'm not the most charismatic person in the world. So I think if their armies and their personality surpasses mine, and they're a little bit more outgoing than I am, then I'm like, perfect, we'll get them on. But what we don't want, and I don't want to sound a bit snooty here, but we do need good looking armies, because I provide a good table.
Well, you provide an elite product, or not a high end product.
High end product, yeah. Elite. I don't want to be elite.
No, it's not elite. Yeah.
High end, and it needs to be reasonable. And it's really tough, You get guys, that have poured hours and hours into their army, and how do you tell that guy that, great for being in a hobby and good for you, but then how do you tell him, well, you just don't quite meet the standard? I mean, that's awful to say to someone, but you have to put your business head on, and you have to kind of protect your product and protect your outlook, don't you, and your aesthetic. And, don't get me wrong, I've never said flat no to anybody, but I've just kind of said, well, perhaps have a look at this, try that, try this. Oh yeah, okay. And it's really tough, isn't it? It's really tough.
Yeah. I mean, I've had a few people suggest being on the show, and as you say, same with podcasts, same with anything you do. Sure. You want whoever's coming on to fit into what you're selling.
Yes.
And sometimes people don't. And I've had a couple of people on the show where actually I won't invite them back, and that's nothing to do with them. It's just, it didn't work. And, I say I have to protect the Imperial Truth as a product, as it were, because, for whatever value people think we've got, I've got a value of what the show is, and that's what I want to do. And actually, I'm the most important person because I'm the bloke behind the scenes doing it all.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I totally agree. And it is tough. We could pull from lots of other sources, but we don't, unfortunately. So it's a bit of a tough one, really. But people have to understand, and I hope I don't offend anybody if I don't get back to them for a reason. It's mainly because I'm completely unorganised and I'm awful at organising my email. That's probably the main reason. So, but yeah, it's a bit tough sometimes. But like you say, you just gotta protect what you do because if you deviate from what you want, it doesn't become what you want it to, does it? It just falls by the wayside and it's different.
No,
so.
and you also lose like direction on the show as well. And I mean the key is as well when you've got a top end product, which is what you're trying to produce.
Yeah.
When you say someone no, that doesn't mean you're not good. That just means you're aiming at the stuff that's right at the top. And that again, you're videoing it. So there's a whole different, it's different from someone walking around a table and picking a model up and looking at it.
Yes.
It's, there's a lot involved and, you know, for some people it might spur them on. For some people they might say fair enough.
Yeah.
I'm sure the odd person's going to get upset at it. That's life, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it is. And the other thing as well is, unfortunately, it takes about 10 hours to film a game. And then once the filming's done, it then takes me another 8 to 10 hours to edit the footage. And then if I'm putting together stuff that people don't want to watch, then I'm wasting 20 hours of my life. And you know, we've all got family and friends and hobby to be getting on with. And to lose 20 hours for something that people aren't going to watch, it's tough, you know, it really is tough. But yeah, we try to get as many people on as possible, but it's not always doable. And sometimes unfortunately you do have to pick, don't you? So
yeah, and all the time you've got lots of people asking as well. You're in that golden position of being able to pick and choose.
Yeah,
which is, you know, it's just testament to the show at the end of the day, because it shows it's working. You said something earlier about you know, the people having the connection to the show, and it's quite funny sometimes how viewers, how consumers feel they own the show, which I think is actually, again, it's a sign of success.
Yeah, it is good. It is good because, you know, people want to get involved and they want to help. So that whether that's painting terrain for me or coming on the channel or helping me sort of operationally doing stuff. And that's really flattering and that's awesome. And, you know, I have accepted help here and there for bits and bobs. Because remember, I'm only one guy. You know, I've got a couple of guys, Alex and Nick, that do film for me. So when I feature in games, one of those two film for me, and they do a fantastic job. But that's all at the moment. I do everything else. And in March, we're planning to put out one a week. That's my plan. So you get one game a week, and the volume of videos and the extra work that creates is going to be phenomenal. So, you know, I am going to release a video very, very soon announcing, you know, that we're going for one a week and that we need people to help and offer goods and services if anybody wants to get involved. So I will be filming that soon and releasing that in the next couple of weeks. So, yeah, there will be, you know, people have different levels about how they want to engage. Some people just want to watch the videos, which is great and that's fantastic. But then also some people want to help out or they want to do this for you and do that for you. And that's a really great thing that the community wants you to survive and thrive and continue making videos. And it's an amazing compliment, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
It's a great feeling when people do that. You sometimes when you're creating like this on the other side of a computer, it's not too dissimilar. You'll get comments on your YouTube videos themselves.
Yes.
and on Facebook, and I'll get the odd message and the comments, but actually it's still quite distant from, and you're like, okay, they're my fans. Okay, but what does everyone else think? And for people to actually offer to do things is a real show of faith, because they're not just writing for 2 seconds on a computer. They're taking, you know, some time to thank you for what they're doing, which is really good. So yeah, that's cool. And just to remind us again where you're based, if people want to offer.
Yeah, of course. So there's a couple of things here. I'm in Peterborough, the amazing metropolis that is Peterborough, and we run a club on a Friday night. So I run the club from the channel studio, I guess you want to call it, on a Friday night, 6 till late, and people can come and play on all the boards that we use on the channel. And there's loads and loads of more. You know, we've got 15 round of battle boards, scenery for all the boards. We've got loads of room to play and host for people. But yeah, you know, if you want to help out. We're in Peterborough. I need some cameramen. I need someone. I'm really awful at the fluff. Like a lot of people talk to me about, oh, did you read that book? And on that planet that happened, and then that. I'm like, I'm sure it happened, and I'm sure it's great, but I'm really bad with fluff. So we need someone to help us out with some fluff and setting up games and to write the narrative for us. We need someone to help us out with that. And a great example of this is Julian Handley, who featured recently. He was playing Paul Busfield, a great game, World Eaters versus Iron Hands, great game. Julian, poor guy, he took. I've got the Forge World City Fight tiles. He took 7 or 8 tiles from me, the Realm of Battle tiles, and he's been painting them every weekend for the last 2 months, the poor bloke. And I know he's super busy, but he's ploughing through them for me. So I'm really excited to get them back and film a game on it, because Julian's a great painter, and so Julian really helped me out there. He really saved me some time. So I was able to do other things in that time. So, if we can, I've got a massive box of terrain. If anybody wants to paint stuff for me, that'd be fun. I've got loads and loads and loads and loads. So that would be awesome. But, so company engagement, come to Peterborough, come to the club, or you can message me at, the 30k channel at gmail.com if you want to get in touch and help us out with some stuff. That would be fantastic.
Nice and easy. Just remind us again, what county is Peterborough in? Because it's one of those places I always know roughly where it is.
Well, it's borderline between Lincolnshire and Cambridgeshire, but it's in Cambridgeshire, so it's very near Cambridge and Northampton, that sort of way. There
we go. So, roughly middle-ish sort of the country, if you ignore the real northern parts. Bless them. So you've said a number of times, so there's obviously a cost involved. You've built some of the stuff yourself, you've got people helping you paint it, but 6 or 7 Realm of Battle tiles is not cheap. Camera, you've got a decent camera, I assume. I know nothing about video cameras.
Yeah, it's pretty reasonable. Yeah.
Even just the stuff you make, you've got to buy materials for. You said at the start there was quite an input of cash in that. Is the channel kind of recouping a bit of that for you, or is it a case of love of your heart and other little bits, some help?
No. It's running at a complete loss and is completely funded by my salary.
I thought it might be.
So much to my girlfriend's disgust. Because, I'm spending money on material and bags of sand and rocks and not dinners out at nice restaurants and flash cars and stuff. But, no, she's not that bad. She's bitching at me in the background. That's okay. It's completely funded out of my own pocket. I was lucky. Before I started the channel, I did have a lot of stuff, just Realm of Battles, sure. And I did have a lot of stuff, I have to admit. It was bordering on excessive, but, initially the startup cost went into the thousands, and now we're renting a unit, so that's quite expensive, but people are helping us out, which is great. Not to a massive amount, but people are helping us out with their time and effort. And the guys from the club have donated some scenery, and we're able to beg, borrow, and steal other scenery. But as I alluded to earlier, I said in March we're doing one a week. We're going to go pay-per-view, very much like the other channels out there. Yeah. So you'll get one video a month free of charge, as you are now. I've stuck to that one a month. And then there'll be 3 additional videos for, I think we're doing it for £3. For £3. So, a small cup of coffee, you'll get 3 additional videos plus any extra content I can film in that month.
Sure. So, yeah, because there's a number of different ways of doing things. Obviously, that is a common one for videos. Things like Patreon.
Yes.
Was that something you looked at?
Yeah, we had contact from a few people from various different places around the world and in the UK saying, have you got a Patreon? Are you going to do it? And I guess I could, but I think initially I just want to prove to myself that I can do for a month and with the same quality and the same standards and put those out. And if I can, I think we'll do okay. I'm not looking to buy a yacht and live in Barbados off this. That's not my intention. My intention is to
that came across.
Yeah. Is to give something back, but also I'd like to break even. I'd like a little bit of profit at the end of the month to buy some more scenery and get some more games sorted. But I'm I'm not in here to get rich. Do you know what I mean? I've got a great job that pays me a good salary, and I'm really happy with it. But
yeah, I think if we were into these kind of things to make money, we'd be doing computer games or Magic the Gathering, wouldn't we? We wouldn't be doing Warhammer, unfortunately. But it certainly does help when you know that there's funds coming in. And actually, I think we talked again with people saying they like something. When people put money behind you, even £3, then it's like, well, they must like it because they're paying me to do it. So, you know, it is a small amount of money. I see you're undercutting GW. That's very good. So you can get 4 games of Heresy. I mean, we saw our first Heresy game from them Friday. Yeah. I don't know if you've seen it.
No, well, the problem is I don't have access to Twitch, and I already pay quite a few pounds a month to other channels to watch their pay-per-view service. So there has to be a cap on how much you can spend, but I did hear it was quite good. So
yeah, I mean, it's a very different thing. It's much more of a top-down view of what's going on and the guys chatting about it, but you're not getting the views that you get where you're in the army, where you're seeing the models up close anywhere near as much. It's a very different thing.
Yes.
And fundamentally, their 30k is always competing against their 40k time because they've got the 3 main games. So if you're wanting pure 30k product, then your channel producing that much is going to be well worth a few quid.
Thank you. I hope so. I sincerely do. Yeah. I think we've got something. I think we can just offer something different out there. There's lots of stuff out there other people doing some great stuff. And I just think that what I'm offering is just a little bit different. And I hope people will support it and they will help me do more, because I have so many plans and so many ideas to go so much further with what I'm doing now. My only limiting factor at the moment is just time. And, if I can gain a little bit more time via this service, then maybe we can do some more. But there is lots more to come. I just wish I could do it full time, because then everything would come so quickly. But as with everything, you've got to start small, haven't you? And go from there.
Absolutely. In terms of before you started this, did you have much experience with either videoing or playing around with YouTube, computers, editing? No?
No.
Good man.
So 6 months ago, I went, I'm going to give this a go. And I realised that my old battered gaming PC was never going to do what I needed it to do. So I talked to some friends and I said, look, just write me a shopping list of what I need, and then I'll just go buy it and do it. So that's what I did. I brought everything on that list I was told to buy, and I did a bit of research myself. I wasn't completely inept. So I did that, brought it all, and then I filmed me walking around in my front room, sat down at a table, almost like like the BBC One News almost, just sat down just reading something from a book, and I bunged it into the computer program I bought. I'd never brought a computer program up until 6 months ago, and never done that. And I just banged it in and went, right, I want to do that. And then I scratched my head and it all came together. So yeah, I had no experience until 6 months ago. And I think that still shows a little bit in my editing, but it is, with every game, it's getting better. It's getting better and better and better, as you'd hope. But yeah, it was a hell of a ride. And the other thing is I work away 3-4 nights a week. So most of it was done in a hotel room.
Sure.
Sat in bed with my laptop on my lap, just trying to work it all out. But,
living the dream.
Oh, I tell you, it's amazing.
Yeah, brilliant. I think it's one of those things. I was the same. YouTube, Google searches on how to do stuff, and the 1 or 2 friends who had a vague idea about what they were doing, become quite useful at those moments. Excellent. I think we're getting pretty much there. Would you have any advice for someone who's thinking about a YouTube channel? A gaming YouTube channel?
Yeah, for me, from the outset, I was very clear about what I wanted to present. I've seen friends and other channels kind of start, and they're not really sure about what direction and what they want to deliver, and it's changed too substantially. And I just think you need to work out what you're going to do, and then continue on regardless. Obviously tweak it for the better, but you need to decide where you want to pitch yourself in the market, or what level or what capability you are, and just go for it. And I think that's what I've done. and I'm always striving to get better, but I have a vision in my head about where I'd like to be. I'm not quite there yet, but yeah, just pick your spot and go for it, I guess.
Yeah, cool. And you know, I'm going to preface this when this episode comes out, but you are doing a high-end product. There is no need for everyone to do a high-end product. There are, you know, those videos we talked about are still good videos. They're just not the ideal of what you wanted to produce, what you wanted to watch. And there's a difference between, you know, having an ideal and still finding something enjoyable and useful and entertaining.
Yes, but at the same time, if I just did what 3 or 4 other guys are doing out there, then we're all in competition with each other, and I don't want to compete with other people. I think this hobby is big enough for people to have different entry levels or different interests into it, you know. And I think if I just did the same, then I'm competing, and I really don't want to do that. So I think there's room for everyone, you know. Yeah,
but having that unique selling point, is going to set you apart, is going to give you every opportunity to become the things you want to become, and not get you lost in the crowd.
Yeah, exactly right. You need a USP. You need that point of difference,
unless you're the first. If you're the first, like the first podcast, you can do whatever you want. It's brilliant.
Well, exactly right.
You don't even have to be very good.
Good stuff.
Cool. Is there anything else you want to bring up before we?
Oh God, no, I just really wanted to, you know, say thank you so much to everyone out there that supported me. You know, people are great. They leave these amazing comments, on the bottom of the videos and all the photos we put on the Facebook page, and you know, and I appreciate everyone that takes the time to watch them. And, you know, as I said to you earlier, I'm always up for adapting and changing. So if anyone's got any ideas, or, you know, they want to just email me, we can chat, or if you see me at wherever, you know, just come over and talk and tell me if it's good, tell me if it's bad. I won't get upset, I won't get angry. I take it all on board, and I try to adapt as much as possible. So yeah, just thank you so much for all your support. It's amazing. And you as well, Greg. You know, I didn't really know you up until a few months ago, and you know, we chatted, and you know, here we are talking together and linking up, you know, and that's fantastic. As I said, the hobby is such a great place, and there's room for everyone, you know, and it's so friendly, and it's got a great community spirit, and it's just awesome.
Wait till you get the bad reviews.
Oh,
that's all I can
we've
say.
had some already.
Oh, have you? Excellent. They're great fun. It's quite funny. People say to me, "Oh, you got a bad review," and I tell them what some of them are. Unfortunately, some of those forums have gone now, and you can't actually access them. But I find them hilarious. I think they're brilliant. But you know,
you can't please everybody. Even if you put out, it's like a car manufacturer. If you put out the best, most attractive, the fastest car in the world, there are people out there that still aren't gonna like it. So you just can't please everybody. You just have to, like I say, pitch where you're going and just do it, you know. And
you don't even want to please everyone, because there are those people who will want you to do things that you don't want to do. And that's fine. That's cool. You know, when you look at the podcast scene, you look at myself, Horace came along a little while afterwards. It's a very different show. And people are going to love that show for what that show is, and they're going to love my show for what my show is. And they might not listen to both. They might choose, and that's fair enough. That's cool.
Yeah, but like I said to you earlier as well, everyone's got a different interest and a different access into the hobby, and what might be good for me isn't good for someone else. But there's other people that plug those gaps, you know, and that's fantastic. There should be a variety. It shouldn't be a monopoly, and you know, it can only be a great thing with all that variety out there.
Definitely. So the YouTube channel, do you want to give out all your shout outs before you head off?
Yes, please. So the channel is obviously the 30k channel. The pay-per-view service is the 30k channel X. I've gone with X. We've thought of lots of other different names, but we went with X. So that will be live very, very soon. We'll have lots of videos on there. But yeah, I mean, we've also got Instagram, we've got Facebook. So what I tend to do is I tend to film the games, put them out on YouTube, and then go to Facebook, look on the albums page, and there should be loads and loads of photos from that game. So it's just different shots, different scenes. There's a couple of behind the scenes shots sometimes. And so, yeah, so if you want to get some more goodness there, you're more than welcome to. And obviously, if anybody out there has got any thoughts or they want to help me out in any kind of way, then you can just email me, which is, as I said earlier, the 30k channel at gmail.com, and I'd just love to hear from you.
Brilliant stuff.
Thanks, Greg.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we'll get you on the show at another point to talk about something, because, why not?
Well, appreciate it.
And you're off to Gibraltar soon, aren't you?
Oh, yes. So off to Horus Heresy No Retreat, the first one ever. Yeah, I'm really excited about that. Stephen Pardo, the guy that runs that, he's been great. He's very good at communicating with everybody, and he put such a great job into those invites that we've all received now. And we're quite lucky as well. We've got 4 people from the club going, from the club in Peterborough, so that's a good representation, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, really looking forward to that. Can't wait.
Brilliant. Well, thanks again, and I'll catch you at an event soon, I'm sure.
I appreciate this. Thanks very much, Greg.
Cheers.
Cheers.
And that's another show in the bag, with all kinds of topics on it on this one, which is always good. Before we head off, we should do the usual stuff. So, Neil, you are going to paint some more Corax, aren't you? And you're going to show it off.
I am, yes. I definitely am.
So, Instagram is the best place to go?
Yeah, I always put pictures up on Instagram because it's so easy, and it's not difficult just to whack a photo up there. So check me out on Instagram, which is @NeilPaints.
And then we're both on Twitter. So @ChildofFang or @NeilPaints on Twitter. And
Yes.
The show is Imperial_Truth if you want to get a hold of us that way. Say we've got the emails as well. So if you've got some questions, please feel free to ask us questions. Again, Greg @theimperialtruth.com.
And Neil @theimperialtruth.com.
Cool. And if you are going to the London Heresy and you haven't set your list in, technically you've missed the date. So this is your reminder that your lists need to come in because they need to go up online. And that's why they're being done early. I've had all kinds of people going, lists need to be in. And I'm like, yeah, it says it all in the pack. It's all there. So, please check as well the way to send them. And we can start ramping up towards the London Heresy, which will be cool. Can't wait for that.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
You have to do some judging.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm all for that.
Groovy.
Might bring some paints along, see if I can get a little bit of painting done. Probably
yeah.
won't.
That's helping me out, is it? Okay, right, yeah.
Yeah.
Fine. Good to know. Excellent. And what we are going to do is, and if you've got any, so that's events @theimperialtruth.com for that one. We will be running the next charity draw. So I am going to post up on the forum, on the Facebook group and on Twitter. I'll announce it, and it'll be on the website as usual when I've done these. And it'll be the same kind of thing. Send your money in via PayPal, via friends or family, or pay for it. Basically, every whole £1 will get you a ticket. And it will be for a signed poster. I'll choose one. And I've got some books and CDs lying around. And where I announced, Miles has given us some lessons to give away as part of his sponsorship. One of those is going to be free as well as one of the prizes. So hopefully there'll be 3 or 4 prizes, maybe 4 or 5, depending on if I can talk to some people and get some done. And we'll run that and we'll draw it on the second day of the London Heresy, I think. And that'll bring kind of this season of like the charitable giving for the hospice. What's it called again? Evelina
Children's Hospital.
Yeah. So that will give, like, we'll cut that one off and we'll move on to another one for the second part of the year, as it were, and do 6 months of that one, and then roll it round. It's just if I end it at the event, we can have like buckets out of the event to pick up loose change or whatever. And if you are at the event, you'll be able to buy tickets there as well. So
Yes.
we shall do that. Brilliant stuff. And I think that's about it. Have you got anything else to say, Neil?
Not really, no.
Good. You'd disappoint everyone if you did, I think.
Yeah, exactly. I don't have a lot to say.
Well, yeah, quite. Brilliant stuff. And yeah, we'll have, as I say, don't forget we've got the shirts now up on Zazzle. Again, there's going to be a link in the show notes and probably on the website as well. And I'm going to try and expand that store as I go, because hopefully it's just cool stuff. And that way people can pick and choose what they want without me having to kind of chase people up or anything like that, which will be useful because I'm not very good at organising things myself, which is always fun. Yeah, I think we're at the end of the show. I can't think of anything else. So we'll leave it there. Once again, thanks for listening. You have been listening to The Imperial Tree.